Chapter 4374. Greetings, fellow Daoist Zhai Xingzi. Xian Songzi revealed a smile at the corner of his mouth. He withdrew the essence soul restriction that sealed the surroundings of Zhai Xingzi and the others before bowing and saying, "Junior brother Jingting and I have come under master's orders to protect the four of you." "Your master?" Zun Kong frowned and asked curiously, "Your master is Grand Mist Ancestor, right? He seems to have an ordinary relationship with us." "Ha ha." Daoist Jingting laughed and said, "My master." Zhai Xingzi and the others immediately pricked up their ears, wanting to know who Daoist Jingting and Xian Songzi's master was. Unfortunately, Xian Songzi interrupted Daoist Jingting and said with a smile, "Master only ordered us to protect the four of you. He didn't tell us to reveal his name." "All right." Daoist Master Jingting smiled. Of course, he knew that Xiao Hua didn't care about revealing his name. However, looking at Xiao Hua under the fire pillar in the distance, Daoist Master Jingting was also bewildered. He simply followed Xian Songzi's words and said, "In that case, let's wait for Master's orders." It must be Xiao Hua. Although Daoist Jingting and Xian Songzi didn't say it, Gusu Chodi said, "Gong Shuisin is going to gouge her eyes out." "Oh, how do you know?" Zhai Xingzi asked in confusion. "There are 3 reasons. Gusu Chodi said with a smile. "First, the voice just now was Xiao Hua's voice. Second, Daoist Jingting and Xian Songzi can cultivate from nascent soul to body fusion. It's not strange that Xiao Hua can cultivate to 9th grade. Third, a woman's intuition." "Ha ha ha." Zhai Xingzi hugged his lover and laughed, "If it's really Xiao Hua, then I'll invite Daoist Xiao to the Gusu family to propose marriage. I'd like to see who dares to not give face to a Grand Ascension cultivator." "Hee hee." Gusu Chodi laughed until her eyes narrowed. She said in a low voice, "Even if it's not Xiao Hua, it has a lot to do with Xiao Hua. Husband can also ask Xiao Hua to invite this senior to the Gusu family. If it's Xiao Hua, then..." Zhong Daoran pointed at the little white dragon in the fire pillar and asked, "Who is this?" Xian Songzi took out a pill and handed it to Gusu Chodi. "Fellow immortal, this is a pill concocted by I. Take it first and see what happens. If it doesn't work, I will ask Martial Uncle to bestow upon you the medicinal pills used by Confucian cultivators." "All right." Gusu Chodi smiled as she took the pill. However, she suddenly realized something and exclaimed, "What? You have an uncle master? What is his cultivation level?" "Hee hee." Xian Songzi replied in a boastful manner, "What do you think, fellow immortal? Your master is already at the Mahayana stage. Martial Uncle should be a literary sage, right?" Gusu Chodi probed. "Could it be that he's a literary star? This is impossible." "Haha, fellow immortal, you don't have to guess anymore." Daoist Jingting said with a smile, "4 fellow Taoists, please follow us to Bai Qingyu. Master has instructed us to attend Qing Bo's banquet." Fellow Taoist. Exalted Master Zun Kong wasn't particularly familiar with Daoist Jingting and Xian Songzi. He bowed and said, "If possible, I would like to ask the 2 fellow Taoists to lend a hand and ask the 2 fellow Taoists' master to save Daoist Xiao." "Fellow Daoist, don't worry." Daoist Jingting said with a smile, "Master brought 200,000 disciples to save him." "Ah." 4 thunderbolts blasted Zhai Xingzi, Gusu Chodi, Zhong Daoran, and Exalted Master Zun Kong unconscious. After half a cup of tea's time, Gusu Chodi gasped and said in a low voice, These 200,000 nascent soul cultivators are all your descendants. You're from the same sect. Since when did our hidden immortal continent have a Tao cultivator sect?" It was an indescribable shock. They originally thought that these 200,000 nascent soul cultivators were all the Tao cultivators in the entire hidden immortal continent, but Zhong Daoran and the rest didn't expect that these were merely the nascent soul disciples of a Tao cultivator sect. It wasn't that their imagination wasn't rich enough, it was because they didn't dare to imagine. "Let's talk about this after we meet Master." Xian Songzi and Daoist Jingting smiled without saying anything. They raised their hands and said, "Please." Gusu Chodi thought that she had discovered the truth of the matter, but when she heard that there was another Confucian cultivator who was at least a literary saint, she lost all confidence in her guess. Although Xiao Hua could miraculously cultivate to the Grand Ascension stage, where would he find another literary saint junior brother? When Zhai Xingzi and the rest fell into a dead end, Xiong Yi and the rest of the Fortune Gates disciples were also in a desperate situation. Xiong Yi couldn't help but want to roar as he watched his disciples die in front of him. He activated his sword pillar and killed one demon soldier after another, but how could the lives of these demon soldiers be compared to the lives of the Fortune Gates disciples? Xiong Yi's heart was bleeding. Prince Lan's mood wasn't any better. He regretted not killing Xiong Yi outside the battlefield so that he could bring these Fortune Gates disciples back to the Soaring Dragon Mountain range. Seeing that Xiong Yi was blocked by a demon general, Prince Lan hurriedly released his divine sense to search for Daoist Master Qing Shu, who was hiding among the Fortune Gates disciples. Prince Lan. Sure enough, Daoist Master Qing Shu's voice sounded 1,000 zhong away from Prince Lan. Are you going to make a move? Prince Lan, it's not too late to make a move now. If you delay any longer, all of Bai Qingyu's demon soldiers will surround us and we won't even be able to escape. Another voice sounded. Prince Lan was shocked. Venerable Master Fan Tian? When did you arrive? Not just me. Venerable Master Fan Tian laughed. The ancestor has also sent over a dozen nascent soul and leaving aperture realm cultivators to help you. As long as you give the order now, we will immediately make you the master of the Soaring Dragon Mountain range. Otherwise, we will prepare to retreat now. After all, Bai Qingyu isn't someone a few nascent soul realm cultivators like us can defeat. Fine. Prince Lan looked at the corpses all over the ground. Humans and demons were mixed together. He gritted his teeth and said, I've decided. Right at this time, the 200,000 Fortune Gates iron-blooded disciples drove their lightning boats out from the left. Their imposing aura filled the entire battlefield. Not only Prince Lan and Xiong Yi, but even Daoist Qing Shu and Venerable Master Fan Tian were shocked. When the Fortune Gates disciples came closer and everyone's divine sense swept over them, they couldn't help but be surprised and delighted. Xiong Yi controlled his sword pillar to dodge the demon general's attack and shouted, Disciples, our human race has reinforcements. Several 100,000 nascent soul realm disciples are enough to flatten Bai Qingyu. Kill, yes. All of the Soaring Dragon Mountain range disciples didn't know what was going on, but their hearts were filled with hope and their morale was greatly boosted. Venerable Master Fan Tian, Prince Lan was also in a daze. He transmitted his voice to Venerable Master Fan Tian. Are these the cultivators you mentioned? The ancestor actually has so many disciples. Venerable Master Fan Tian naturally didn't understand what was going on, but when he heard Prince Lan's question, he replied proudly, Of course they aren't my disciples. However, if there is a possibility, then there is only one possibility. This is the ancestor's arrangement. In this world, only our Grand Mist ancestor has such a big hand. Kill. At this point, how could Prince Lan not know what to do? He roared and pounced towards the demon general. How could Venerable Master Fan Tian not understand the meaning behind his words? Venerable Master Qing Shu leaped up and pounced on Xiong Yi. Kill for me. At this time, in the distant sky, the black bear spirit's hysterical roar entered Prince Lan's and the others' ears. Prince Lan turned pale with fright and hurriedly released his divine sense. The black bear spirit, who hadn't appeared in the sky a moment ago, had actually activated his demonic cloud and revealed the strength of a 6th grade origin Qi realm great demon. Beside him, the golden eagle and white lion also revealed their figures. Not good. Prince Lan frantically shouted, This is my Fortune Gates disciple. Venerable Master Qing Shu and Venerable Master Fan Tian were about to attack, but when they heard Prince Lan's shout, their hearts trembled and they quickly stopped. The two of them looked at each other and quietly retreated. Xiong Yi, who was facing countless murderous intents, naturally didn't notice Venerable Master Qing Shu and Venerable Master Fan Tian's ambush. When he heard the black bear spirit's roar and Prince Lan's shout, he hurriedly withdrew and released his divine sense. Sure enough, in the sky behind him, the golden eagle spread its wings and swept away all the snowflakes floating in the air. Its huge demonic body revealed the strength of a 6th grade origin Qi realm cultivator. What's going on? Xiongyi was stunned. He hurriedly urged his body to fly up into the sky. At this time, a voice came from not far away. Is Brother Xiong in front? Oh! Xiongyi was slightly taken aback and hurriedly turned his head. He saw Venerable Master Qing Shu and Venerable Master Fan Tian flying over with smiles on their faces. Venerable Master Qing Shu? Xiongyi had seen Venerable Master Qing Shu in front of the Yaotai mountain. He was a little surprised to see Venerable Master Qing Shu here. We are under the orders of the Grand Mist Ancestor to bring a dozen cultivators to rescue Venerable Xiao. Venerable Master Qing Shu explained sincerely. When Xiongyi heard this, a smile appeared on his face. He bowed and said, "Thank you, brother. Thank you for your concern for my master." "You're welcome." Venerable Master Qing Shu helped Xiongyi up with a smile and said, "You and I are both from the Dao sect. When one of us is in trouble, we naturally need help from all sides. Currently, in the hidden immortal continent, only Venerable Xiao can enter my master's eyes. How can my master not come to rescue Venerable Xiao?" At this point, Venerable Master Qing Shu said with a puzzled expression, "But, what's going on with these hundreds of thousands of cultivators?" "This." Xiongyi smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know either. When I figure it out, I will tell you in detail. In addition, when Bai Qingyu's matter is over, I will inform my master of your great kindness and ask him to make a decision." "Well said, well said. We'll talk about everything after this matter is over." Venerable Master Qing Shu smiled and turned to Venerable Master Fan Tian and said, "Senior Brother Fan Tian, how about we join hands and attack Bai Qingyu?" "Okay." Venerable Master Fan Tian laughed loudly. The two of them no longer spoke to Xiongyi and attacked Bai Qingyu with their techniques. Chapter 4375. Senior Brother Xiong, what is going on? Cold sweat dripped down Lan's back. He flew to Xiongyi's side and asked loudly, "Are these hundreds of thousands of disciples really my Fortune Gates disciples?" "How would I know?" Xiongyi felt an indescribable joy in his heart, but he still lowered his voice and said, "I'm just using them to boost the disciples' morale. As for the details, I'll have to ask Black Bear. Let's go." Prince Lan had a guilty conscience, so he was naturally nervous as he urged Xiongyi. Xiongyi and Lan flew high up in the sky and were immediately spotted by the golden condor. The golden condor flapped its wings and arrived in front of the two before Black Bear. It transformed into its human form and bowed. Golden Condor greets the two young masters. "Are you really the Golden Condor?" Lan was in disbelief. After all, the Golden Condor's ferocious aura was much stronger than the demonic beast generals he had encountered before. "Yes, this lowly one is the Golden Condor." The Golden Condor replied indifferently. Although it addressed Lan as the young master, it was Xiao Hua's demonic beast guardian. From its point of view, it was closer to Xiao Hua. "Are these hundreds of thousands of nascent soul cultivators my Fortune Gates disciples?" Xiongyi asked again. "Yes." The Golden Condor nodded. "These 200,000 disciples are the Fortune Gates disciples personally trained by Master." "How is that possible?" Prince Lan exclaimed. "Hasn't he been suppressed by Monster Monarch Bikingyu all these years? How could he train so many nascent soul cultivators?" At this moment, the 200,000 iron-blooded army had already charged past Xiongyi and His Highness Lan. The two thunderbolts rumbled as they charged towards the depths of Bai Qingyu. Bai Qingyu's demons didn't put up much resistance in this torrent and were all killed. Even if there were dozens of 6th-grade demonic beast generals, there were still severed divinity stage disciples among the Fortune Gates disciples who flew out and killed them. How could Lan believe that every single Fortune Gates disciple had a higher cultivation than him? The one suppressed by Bai Qingyu wasn't Master. The Golden Condor replied, "As for how Master trained these disciples, he will naturally explain it to the young Master. Xiongyi, Prince Lan." At this moment, the Black Bear spirit flew over. After calling out to them affectionately, he seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly kept his wild waves. He bowed and said, "Black Bear greets the two young sect masters." Seeing Black Bear being so respectful towards him, Xiongyi smiled and said, "Now that you are a 6th-grade essence energy, this Xiong is merely a 4th-grade essence energy. You are this Xiong's senior." I don't dare." Black Bear was a little arrogant, but he was only respectful. Black Bear is only the old master's gatekeeper. I can't be compared to young sect master. Where is master? His Highness Lan asked again. I don't know either. Black Bear laughed. Master has already arrived a step earlier. I don't know where he went. Sigh. His Highness Lan was shocked, and cold sweat immediately appeared on his back. Black Bear, tell me honestly. You are already at 6th grade essence force. Where is master? Xiong Yi had a clear conscience, and there was only ecstasy in his heart. He understood that since Xiao Hua was able to nurture an ordinary Fortune Gate disciple into a nascent Soul Realm cultivator, and even a nascent Soul Realm cultivator, then as Xiao Hua's disciple, his future was limitless. Does that even need to be said? White Lion also flew over and laughed. From today onwards, our Fortune Gate's disciples can do whatever they want in the Three Mainland. This is too inconceivable, too inconceivable. Xiong Yi really didn't know how to express his incomparably wild emotions. Bear Palm Sect Master. At this time, Yingpo also flew over and shouted, What's going on? Haha, my master is here. Xiong Yi laughed loudly. These 200,000 nascent Soul Realm disciples are all my Fortune Gate's disciples. That's impossible, right? Yingpo was still alive, and he looked at everyone in confusion. He then looked at the little white dragon inside the fire pillar and said, If Master Xiao is here, then who is being suppressed under the fire pillar? Black Bear Spirit shrugged and shook his head. Old Master didn't say, so I don't know either. Boom. At this time, a burst of devil chi soared into the sky, and a figure flashed by. Bai Qingyu, a 7th grade Essence Force great beast, was killed, and the commotion immediately attracted everyone's attention. Is that Yuan Ya? Prince Lan's eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. When did he become so fierce? Haha, the fierceness is yet to come. Black Bear Spirit laughed. Black Bear is about to swallow the sun, and Ya is Old Master's inner disciple. How can he be worse than Black Bear? Black Bear Spirit said in a low voice, Xiong Yi, I boasted in front of Master that I would massacre Bai Qingyu. You also know that I can fight alone, but when it comes to mobilizing troops, I'm not even fit to carry your shoes. You have to help me. Oh, these disciples don't know you, just give the order, I'll pass it to you. Ha ha. Xiong Yi laughed and said, with these 200,000 disciples, why would I need to mobilize troops? Wouldn't it be easier to just flatten Bai Qingyu? Hee hee. Black Bear Spirit only laughed and didn't dare to reply. Since Xiong Yi said so, he naturally didn't dare to be careless. He released his divine sense and began to pass down the order. Xiong Yi was even more shocked when he saw the 200,000 disciples advancing in an orderly manner. This was clearly an army that had been on the battlefield for a long time. With such an army, who in the Three Mainlands could be the Fortune Gate's opponent? Xiong Yi had never seen such a battle formation before. Xiao Hua was also anxious. Seeing the little white dragon suppressed by the fire pillar and the Fortune Gate's disciples fighting on the battlefield, he sent out 200,000 Fortune Gate's iron army. Back in the ruins, when the devil race invaded, the Fortune Gate only sent out 200,000 disciples. Those 200,000 disciples roamed the southwest of the ruins, saved 8 sects from danger, and defeated the devil race. Their fame spread far and wide. Now, how could a small Bai Qingyu compare to the devil race? Although these 200,000 disciples weren't all the original 200,000 disciples, the main force was still there. Facing Bai Qingyu's demon soldiers and generals, these 200,000 Fortune Gate's disciples were like a flood that washed over the land. The several 100,000 demonic beast cultivators who tried to resist were like small ripples in the water as they were annihilated. The several 100,000 demonic beast cultivators who were holding back the rear also hurried over to meet the battle. Seeing such an unstoppable attack, Xiong Yi was shocked. He flew to the Black Bear Spirit's side and opened his mouth, but no words came out. Not only were these Fortune Gate's disciples powerful, but their teamwork was also very good. More importantly, there was a cultivator who was better at commanding than him. Xiong Yi had already noticed that after he gave out his orders, the Fortune Gate's disciples would complete their tasks to the letter. Moreover, They would also reorganize some details that he hadn't thought of. Moreover, this situation didn't happen in one place, but in different areas of the 200,000 disciples. In other words, there were many disciples who were commanding the battle. At this point, Xiongyi was too embarrassed to give any orders. He looked at the Black Bear spirit and said, "Black Bear, Master asked you to command this battle, because he has a card up his sleeve. Why are you pulling me?" "Ah, is that so?" The Black Bear spirit naturally couldn't see the reason. He scratched his head and said, "How would I know? I'm just afraid of messing up Master's plan." "Then what do you think we should do?" "Easy." Xiongyi looked at Prince Lan, then at the golden condor and white lion. He smiled and said, "Just 5 words. Say it, say it." The Black Bear spirit urged. "Bathe Bai Qingyu in blood." Xiongyi replied word by word. "Mph, that's right, massacre." The Black Bear spirit snorted coldly, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. Master is benevolent. If he wasn't forced, he would never give orders like this. Xiongyi smiled, but the smile on his face was cold. He replied, "However, we lost more than half of our Fortune Gate's disciples in this battle. Do you think the Fortune Gate's disciples you brought will show mercy? Kill, kill, kill." The Black Bear spirit understood and shouted, "Massacre Bai Qingyu." Naturally, there was no need for the Black Bear spirit to say the word kill. The Fortune Gate's disciples from the Shenhua continent flew over and saw the corpses on the ground. There was no lack of humans among them. Their eyes had long turned red. The lightning above the lightning boats were like swords, while the treasures below the boats were like blades. The blades and swords fell on Bai Qingyu's demonic beasts, reaping their lives every time. The demonic beasts' lives and blood were washing away the humiliation they had inflicted on Daoist Xiao. While Jai Xingzi, Xiongyi, Ao Sheng, and Ao Zhantian were ecstatic to have escaped death, the 3 beast kings and the group of demonic beasts near Bai Qingyu's heavenly dam water prison were in a predicament. These demonic beast clansmen who were gulping down wine, meat, and slaughtering demonic beasts as appetizers laughed heartily when they saw the appearance of the 200,000 Fortune Gate disciples. They thought that it was another free meal. However, when they saw the Fortune Gate disciples slaughtering the demonic beast clansmen, destroying Bai Qingyu's demonic beast formation like a hot knife through butter, and the 2 lightning ships approaching the heavenly dam water prison, they were dumbfounded. "My eyes aren't playing tricks on me, right?" Peng Jun looked at the light screen in disbelief and released his primordial sense. His primordial sense swept across the battlefield like a mountain. The killing intent of the hundreds of thousands of disciples almost destroyed his primordial sense. Peng Jun couldn't help but ask. Ni Quan was also dumbfounded. Could it be that the Dao Gates cultivators from the hidden immortal continent are all here for Daoist Xiaohua? How is that possible? Bai Qing's body flashed with a 5-colored halo as he replied coldly, "Even the entire hidden immortal continent can't have so many high-level cultivators, right? Then where did these humans come from? It seems like we didn't receive any information at all, right?" Peng Jun frowned. "Ha ha ha, who cares where they came from?" Bai Qing laughed loudly. "Right now, not only do we have Bai Qingyu's demonic beasts, but we also have the demonic beasts from Shrouding Sky Ridge and Ancient Bell Mountain. Why would we be afraid of these hundreds of thousands of humans? Do you think these demonic beasts in front of us are pushovers? I originally thought that this would be a feast, and these human cultivators were merely appetizers. Who would have thought that they would actually become a feast? Brothers." Chapter 4376. Yes. The group of great demons stood up proudly and replied while wiping the blood from their mouths. "Assemble all of Bai Qingyu's demon soldiers and kill the humans," Bai Qing ordered coldly, completely disregarding the hundreds of thousands of nascent soul cultivators. "Yes, Your Majesty." The great demons received the order and moved their demon clouds. The 2 demon kings, Peng Jun and Ni Quan, also looked at each other and ordered the remaining great demons, "You all also lead all the men to fight against the human." "Yes." The group of great demons left, leaving only the 3 demon kings and other demon attendants at the foot of the mountain. Ni Quan raised his head to look at Xiao Hua under the fire pillar and said with a smile, "The humans are the most cunning. Brother Demon, you have to be careful. Don't fall for the human's trick of luring the tiger away from the mountain. Trick of luring the tiger away from the mountain? Bai Qing's tone was full of disdain as she replied, Brother Demon, have you forgotten? The humans also have a saying that all schemes and tricks are nothing in front of strength. Do you think that the human cultivators can succeed in their schemes in front of us demon kings? Brother Demon, you better not be too careless. Ni Quan said with some worry, this is 200,000 nascent soul cultivators. I have never heard that the hidden immortal continent has so many Daoist disciples. If it's really a trick of luring the tiger away from the mountain, this is a bit too much. Peng Jun's eyes flickered with golden light as he looked at the battle in the distance and said indifferently, Xiao Hua, who is only at the 4th or 5th grade of essence energy, is it worth it? Suddenly, Ni Quan opened his mouth again and asked very strangely, Brother Peng, I still don't understand one thing. I didn't dare to ask before. At this point, I think it's better to ask. Oh, what question does Brother Demon have? Could it be that we haven't been frank enough? Peng Jun was stunned. It's not a big question. Ni Quan glanced at Bai Qing and asked, Brother Peng seems to want to get some information from Xiao Hua, right? Since he's not willing to answer, why can't we search his soul? Although our demon race's soul-searching method can't compare to the humans, it's still better than interrogating for 100 years, right? I'll have to ask Brother Bai to answer this question. Peng Jun's face twitched slightly, revealing a smile yet not a smile as he replied. Bai Qing didn't hide anything and replied, I've thought about this before. However, the soul-searching technique of the demon race is different from that of the human race. Moreover, I've also asked the Confucian cultivators of the human race. They said that the Daoist sect is the best at soul-searching. However, the Confucian cultivator had also said that no matter how brilliant the soul-searching technique was, there was always a chance of failure. So, at this point, Bai Qing pointed at a certain spot in the air and said in a low voice, Ancestor doesn't allow it. All right, then I understand. When Ni Quan heard the old ancestor's name, respect immediately appeared on his face. He knew that the information Bai Qingyu wanted was too important and couldn't be careless in the slightest. He turned his head again, looked around, and said with a smile, apart from the banquet, we've also invited you into our trap. I wonder if the two demon brothers will be able to find any clues in this battle. We still don't know if there's any progress on the matter we're waiting for. However, it seems that Brother Ni's matter has already been ruined. Peng Jun replied with a faint smile. Ni Quan nodded and said, although there hasn't been any news, looking at the situation, there's a more powerful enemy after these humans. This enemy isn't someone that our ancient Bell Mountain can compare to. Anyway, it's just a setup in the human race. If it doesn't work this time, there'll be a next time. Boom. At this moment, a strong wind roared in the distant sky, and several thick 5-colored light pillars soared into the sky. However, the beam of light disappeared in a flash, leaving no trace behind. Haha, it's indeed a diversion. Peng Jun laughed and said with a sweep of the golden light in his eyes. However, after a moment, his face changed slightly, and he said in a low voice, oh no, the enemy seems to be quite powerful or has some special divine ability. I can't find any trace of it. Oh. Bai Qing was also slightly stunned. She glanced at Peng Jun and asked curiously, even Brother Peng can't find it? Yes. Peng Jun's face became more and more serious, and he said in a low voice, it seems that we're going to have some trouble. Brother Bai, have you informed the star-concealing lake about today's battle? Ni Quan asked hurriedly. Bai Qing replied, in addition, if Brother Yarrow has informed, then I'll inform too. When Peng Jun heard this, his face showed a trace of relief, and he said, that's good. That's good. If something really goes wrong, we won't be able to explain it. Ni Quan was even more curious, and he transmitted his voice, Brother Peng, what do you want to ask? It seems that you're more nervous than Bai Qing. Hihi, I can't say. Peng Jun smiled and didn't answer. Ni Quan was about to speak again. Buzz. Suddenly, the weather within a radius of 100 miles changed. The dark clouds suddenly began to roar like waves, and thousands of vortexes formed in midair. Each vortex had wisps of lightning flashing in it. The three monster kings turned pale with fright when they felt the will that was even more vast than the mountains slowly descending from the cloud. After receiving the three beast kings' orders, the group of greater demons led their troops out to meet the Fortune Gate's disciples head-on. The dozen or so greater demons had yet to wipe the blood from the corners of their mouths, and they immediately released their demonic chi. With demonic clouds and demonic weapons in their hands, they charged towards the Fortune Gate's disciples. In the eyes of these greater demons, a grade 4 nascent soul cultivator was just an appetizer, even if there were 200,000 of them. Xiongyi was alarmed when he saw the greater demons flying towards them from afar. He hurriedly shouted, "Black Bear, quick, order the army to get into formation. This is a grade 7 nascent soul realm greater demon, it's not something we can deal with." "Okay." Although Black Bear answered, the disdain in his eyes was obvious. After witnessing the bloody battle between the human race and the devil race, no one would be too concerned about these demonic beasts. "Get into formation and meet the enemy," Black Bear roared in midair. "Catcher!" Huge lightning bolts emerged from the two lightning boats at the same time. The lightning bolts intersected and protected the two lightning boats. Furthermore, after the two lightning boats stopped, lightning bolts appeared on the surface of the flying boats. These lightning bolts formed a net that spread out in all directions. When the 200,000 nascent soul cultivators saw that the two lightning boats had stopped, they also stopped their attacks. However, they did not stop. Instead, they flew in an extremely orderly manner. Some flew to the left, some to the right, and some even flew off into the distance. However, in the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the 200,000 nascent soul cultivators split into 108 small groups and surrounded the Heaven Dam Water Prison's light pillar. Boom boom boom. The moment the 108 small groups appeared, the entire ground shook. Countless amounts of heaven and earth origin energy condensed into thumb-sized crystal lights that fell on the 108 small groups. When the yuan qi of heaven and earth landed, the 108 spots simultaneously flashed with brilliance. Obscure ripples soared into the sky and gathered together in a tacit understanding. Then, they descended towards the light pillars and sealed the entire Sky Dam Water Prison tightly. This is the capital Heavenly Stars formation. Xiongyi couldn't help but exclaim when he saw how familiar the light and the fluctuations were. "That's right," Black Bear said proudly. "This is the military formation that General Sun set up based on the Old Master's capital Heavenly Stars formation. Ever since our Fortune Gate's disciples activated it, they have been invincible and have never been defeated." "General Sun?" Xiongyi was taken aback. He didn't know who Black Bear was talking about. Hee. Black Bear realized that he had misspoken. He chuckled and pointed to the front. "Xiongyi, look ahead, Iro." Xiongyi smiled. Naturally, he wouldn't ask too much. However, he didn't mind Black Bear changing the topic. However, when Xiongyi saw the Fortune Gate's disciples flying out from the 108 small groups, he couldn't help but be shocked. He exclaimed in shock, "How is this possible? There are actually so many body integration realm disciples." There aren't that many. Most of these disciples are 6th grade Essence Force incarnations. Only a few of them are 7th grade Essence Force incarnations. Black Bear chuckled. He didn't seem to care at all. In the past, Xiao Hua had taken away tens of thousands of babies from the soaring Dragon Mountain range. These babies had spent thousands of years in the heavenly prison. Their aptitudes might not be comparable to Liu Yi and the others, but the Shenhua continent's heaven and earth origin energy was unbelievably abundant. Moreover, when these babies cultivated, they were different from Liu Yi and the others. They focused on Dao sect's magic arts, and even lightning arts. Therefore, after thousands of years of focused cultivation, many of the disciples had divine abilities that weren't inferior to Liu Yi and the others. These disciples were the pillars of the Fortune Gate, and at the same time, they were also the elites of the Shenhua continent. After experiencing the ruins and the desolate continent, their knowledge and cultivation had improved greatly. Now, they had all established their own sects. However, there were too many powerful people on the Shenhua continent. Without the permission of the Lightning Sage and Xiao Hua, they were still juniors and didn't establish their own sects. Even when Xiao Hua had casually pulled them out of the Shenhua continent during the battle here, they had only thought of themselves as ordinary Fortune Gate disciples. Only when the Heavenly Star formation was completed and they were facing a 7th grade Essence Force Great Demon did they reveal their sharpness like an awl entering a sack. Master, is really generous Xiongyi groaned. His mouth was full of bitterness. There were tens of thousands of disciples in the soaring Dragon Mountain range, and the highest cultivation was only 4th grade Nascent Soul Realm. When Xiao Hua appeared, he casually took out a Nascent Soul Realm disciple. Moreover, these Body Integration Realm and Spirit Severing Realm cultivators, which had never appeared on the hidden Immortal Continent, were hidden among the Nascent Soul Realm cultivators. The offensive formation from before must have been set up by these high-grade disciples. Xiongyi was smiling bitterly when a cold voice sounded from several formations in the distance. Damn feathered beast, you dare to block the way? Hand over your life. Chapter 4377. Xiongyi knew that it was Yuan Yai's voice the moment he heard it, and he hurriedly looked over. Sure enough, about 10 miles to the left, Yuanya flew over with more than 10 giant dragons. Seeing an eagle-like great demon charging over, he immediately waved his bone spear and went up to meet it. That greater demon had the bloodline of the sky-concealing ridge's golden-winged Great Peng. He saw that the array set up by the Fortune Gate's disciples was very profound. Even though the one flying out of the array was only a 6th grade Origin Energy Dao Gates cultivator, if he attacked directly, he might not have the upper hand. Just as he was thinking about whether or not to attack, he heard Yuan Yai scolding the array, and he couldn't help but feel angry. That greater demon stretched his neck and let out a long cry. Gah! He spread his wings, and his entire body soared into the sky. Then, with a turn, he swooped down like a mountain. His eagle claws not only let out shrill whistling sounds, they even tore through the void. Come on! Yuan Yai narrowed his eyes and roared. Pitch-black true energy flashed around his body. This true energy was different from devil chi, and it didn't have devil flames or devils. However, when this true energy entered the bone spear, devil chi began to form from the bone spear's handle. Countless thumb-sized devils were born from the bone spear, and they rushed towards the tip of the spear. When the demonic chi carried the demon general through the bone spear, a demonic dragon was born in Yuan Yai's hand. It was surrounded by demonic chi. That devil dragon roared and charged into the sky. Even though the golden-winged Great Peng's claws tore through the void, wherever the devil dragon flew out, the devil chi would fill the void. Rip! An ear-piercing sound rang out as the golden-winged Great Peng's claws tore the devil dragon's devil chi apart. One by one, the blood devils were cut in half by the devil chi. Under the devil chi, the bone spear's body was revealed once again. Caw! Seeing that the attack was effective, the great golden-winged rock let out another clear cry and opened its mouth. Whoosh! A silver-white beam of light fell. Wherever the beam of light landed, all the torn demonic chi was destroyed. Not a single demon escaped. However, just as the golden-winged rock was about to grab Yuan Yai's body with its claws, Yuan Yai suddenly raised his hand and flicked the spear. The entire body of the spear emitted a mysterious crimson color. At the tip of the spear, the bone dragon's mouth spat out a ray of bloody light, which landed on the golden-winged rock's body. The golden-winged rock was shocked. It flapped its wings to try to dodge, but it was only able to dodge the attack. One of its wings was hit by the bloodlight. Sizzle. When the sanguine light landed on the wing, half of the wing was immediately corroded. The golden-winged rock's body immediately became unstable. Go to hell! Seeing this, Yuan Yai suddenly roared. A pitch-black light flashed around his body. Under the urging of his dharmic powers, the demonic spear pounced forward like a dragon. The dragon's horn was like the tip of the spear, and it pierced right into the golden-winged rock's abdomen. Puff! The golden-winged rock's demon body, which had been tempered for an unknown period of time, was unable to block the demonic spear. The tip of the spear ruthlessly pierced into the demon body. Caw! The golden-winged rock let out a mournful cry. Its other wing flapped rapidly, and its entire body flew up in the hurricane, trying to escape. However, the golden-winged rock only flew up a few feet. At the spot where the demonic spear had pierced into the demon body, a fist-sized demonic flame appeared. This demonic flame began to spread rapidly from the golden-winged rock's abdomen to other parts of its body. Caw caw. The golden-winged rock panicked. As it screeched, it hurriedly spat out another ray of silver-white light, trying to destroy the demonic flame. However, before it could spit out a few rays of silver-white light, the demonic flame had already swallowed its several hundred jong body. A short while later, a blood-red phantom emerged from the demonic flame. It seemed to be the greater demon's secret technique. Unfortunately, this phantom had only just poked its head out. Aoo. Several devils formed from demonic flame emerged from all directions, opening their mouths wide as they pounced on the phantom. In a few breaths' time, the phantom was swallowed by a group of devils. Sigh. Xiong Yi, who was watching from afar, was dumbfounded. He sucked in a breath of cold air as he said, This is a 7th grade origin Qi realm greater demon Ah. He was killed just like that. It's not just this greater demon, look at the others. The black bear spirit said nonchalantly as he pointed in another direction. Sure enough, other than the greater demon that Yuan Ya was fighting, there were more than a dozen greater demons leading several hundred 6th grade origin Qi realm greater demon generals. With the demonic spear in Yuan Ya's hand, dealing with the greater demon was a piece of cake, but the other Fortune Gate disciples were having a hard time. Most of them were fighting with the greater demon, and there were even 3 to 5 Fortune Gate disciples who were forced into a passive position, almost losing their lives several times. Although Xiong Yi saw it, he could only watch from the sidelines. This level of battle was beyond his ability, and he would only be throwing his life away if he went up. Woo! Right at this moment, a series of thunderous roars that resembled the roars of giant beasts resounded in front of the group of Fortune Gate's disciples. In the next moment, they saw the dense clouds in the middle of the capital Heaven Star formation churning rapidly as thousands of vortexes formed within the formation. Then, thousands of lightning bolts flashed within the vortexes, striking down towards the ground. As the lightning bolts fell, the space within 100 li was filled with huge pillars of lightning. Within these pillars of lightning, a powerful consciousness descended from the heavens, and in a few breaths' time, it had enveloped an area of 1,000 li. Boom! As the unshakable consciousness descended, the capital Heavenly Stars formation let out an even more powerful roar. The 108 talisman-like formations suddenly lit up, emitting dazzling lightning bolts. The lightning bolts soared into the sky, attacking the dozen greater demons and several hundred demon generals blocking the army. Woo! Like a whirlwind, the 7th grade Essence Qi Great Demon and the 6th grade Essence Qi Demon General were instantly annihilated by the lightning. When the lightning passed by, not to mention bones, even the primordial spirit and soul did not have a single trace left behind. Sigh. Xiong Yi's eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. However, the scene that appeared next made him freeze in midair, and he even forgot to breathe. As the consciousness descended, in the midst of the several thousand pillars of lightning, a several thousand jong tall golden body slowly appeared in the sky. This golden body appeared from the feet, inch by inch, and with every inch of the golden body that appeared, the vastness of the consciousness increased by a little. Although the appearance of the golden body seemed slow, in reality, it was extremely fast. When the consciousness that filled heaven and earth had reached its limit, the appearance of the golden body was revealed. Although all the Fortune Gate's disciples had a premonition in their hearts, when Xiong Yi's sword-like eyebrows reached his temples, his phoenix-like eyes slanted, and the anger and supreme majesty between his brows appeared in the sky, the reverence and worship in the hearts of all the disciples also reached an extreme level. The morale that had been suppressed by the greater demons instantly soared into the sky like an unsheathed sword, matching with Xiao Hua's consciousness, as if it was Xiao Hua's sword. Xiao Hua. When the 3 greater demon kings saw Xiao Hua's appearance, the shock in their hearts was even greater than when they saw the sky collapse. How is this possible? Golden light flickered in Peng Jun's eyes, and the feathers around his body trembled rapidly under Xiao Hua's pressure. How can Xiao Hua be a Mahayana cultivator? How can there be a Mahayana cultivator in this world? Damn it. Ni Kwan's heart was like dead ashes. I actually schemed against a human cultivator with a 9th grade essence force. Am I tired of living? Could this be a trap set by Xiao Hua for me, Bai Qingyu? Bai Qing thought even more. No. This can't be Xiao Hua, this is Kai. Peng Jun immediately exclaimed without hesitation. Kai! Bai Qing and Ni Quan were stunned, and asked in surprise, who is Kai? Brother Peng, at this point, could it be that you still have something to hide? What's the point of asking so much now? Peng Jun sneered, and tried his best to resist the pressure, and shouted, how should we deal with it? What countermeasures can we come up with? Bai Qing smiled bitterly. This human cultivator is at the 9th grade essence force. There's an essential difference between the 9th grade and the 8th grade. What can we do to resist? Damn it. Peng Jun's eyes flashed with viciousness. He's just a human. So what if he's at the 9th grade essence force? The three of us have already risked our lives, do we still have to be afraid of him? Don't forget, this dragon who looks like Xiao Hua has been suppressed by us for close to 200 years. If we fall into his hands, I'm afraid we'll suffer a fate worse than death. That's right. If we die, Peng Sage, Bei Sage, and Ni Sage will definitely not let this guy go. Even if he's at the 9th grade essence force, how can he be a match for 3 great sages? Ni Quan made a decision in a moment. The 3 demon kings looked at each other and were about to make a move. At this moment, Xiao Hua was standing in the air like a god. His eyes were like lightning as he looked around. Chimpage. He coldly snorted and grabbed with his right hand. Wung. All the lightning within a few miles was caught in his hand and turned into a lightning sword. Then, Xiao Hua waved his hand, and the lightning sword slashed at the shadow of the fire pillar in midair. Boom! As the lightning sword fell, whether it was the shadow of light or Bai Qingyu's demon array, all of them turned into ashes. However, when the lightning sword landed on the heavenly dam water prison, a 5-colored halo emerged from the top of the prison and blocked the lightning sword. Ha ha! Xiao Hua looked at the halo and laughed. The light of a firefly dares to compete with the brilliance of the sun and the moon. Then, Xiao Hua shook his hand, and the lightning sword turned into tens of thousands of lightning fragments that fell between heaven and earth. At the same time, he waved his right arm and took out the 5-elemental wishful heaven staff. Grow, grow, grow! Xiao Hua roared, and the 5-elemental wishful heaven staff turned into a huge staff that was as big as a mountain. Open! Xiao Hua swung the 5-elemental wishful heaven staff and smashed it on the mountain peak of the heavenly dam water prison. Chapter 4378. Boom! The 5-colored halo only resisted for a moment and immediately turned into fragments scattered among the rocks. When the wishful steel staff fell, the entire mountain peak shook extremely. Just in front of hundreds of thousands of human cultivators, the heavenly dam water prison collapsed from the top, revealing the fire pillar that suppressed the little white dragon inside. The wishful steel staff did not stop and still fell on the fire pillar. However, the 5-colored halo on the fire pillar was instantly destroyed, and the various colors of the demon characters inside were broken inch by inch. The crimson magma and flames inside the fire pillar, as well as the 5-colored light in the flames, were also destroyed by the wishful steel staff. It was like a volcanic eruption pouring out in all directions. How is this possible? Ni Quan and Peng Jun were not surprised, but the 5-colored light around Bai Qing's body could not help but jump, and a surprised voice came. Because he was too clear about the origin of this demon array, he really did not believe that Xiao Hua could defeat this demon array with a single blow. Ni Quan and Peng Jun did not quite understand why Bai Qing was so surprised, but at this time, they saw Xiao Hua waving his big hand holding the wishful steel staff, and the entire collapsed fire pillar was imprisoned by Xiao Hua again. Thousands of small thunder threads gushed out from the big hand, covering all the magma and flames, and a small rune flowed between these thunder threads. In the huge roar, the entire fire pillar was condensed again. As Xiao Hua's big hand grasped, the huge fire pillar shrank, and finally condensed into a fist-sized fire bead. This fire bead was surrounded by thunder patterns, and layers of 5-colored halos also flowed between the thunder patterns. Seeing Xiao Hua's magical power, the 3 demon kings who were going to go all out were completely discouraged. The courage that had just been summoned turned into the 9 clouds, and no one knew where it landed. Luckily, the 3 demon kings rejoiced at the same time. The dragon suppressed under the fire pillar was not killed. However, when Xiao Hua took back the fire pillar, the heavenly dam water prison turned into an abyss of thousands of feet. At the bottom of the abyss, where was the little white dragon's body? Damn it! Xiao Hua scanned the area with his divine sense and immediately flew into a rage. He once again raised his hand. Rumble. 3 enormous bolts of lightning, like dragons, enveloped the 3 monster kings at the same time. Bai Qing and the other beast kings felt the space around them tighten. Not to mention the power of the stars and moon, even the scenery in front of them had changed. The hundreds of thousands of Fortune Gate's disciples from before had turned into a boundless sea of lightning in a flash. Within the sea of lightning, there were horned dragons roaring with fury and dragon's might. You actually dare to make fun of this old man? Xiao Hua's dignified voice emerged from the sea of lightning. Following this voice, countless bolts of lightning surged towards the 3 monster kings. Amidst the lightning, a mountain-like fist struck the 3 Fey monarchs. Boom! 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 The void shattered as the 3 Fey monarchs turned pale with fright. They hurriedly tried to dodge, but in the face of absolute power, all their attempts to block and scheme were futile. In the eyes of the 3 Fey monarchs, the fist had already become the world. The 3 8th-grade demonic beast kings had no way of resisting at all. With 3 loud bangs, the huge demonic beast kings were struck by a fist at the same time. The demonic beast kings that had been refined for God knows how many years were instantly smashed open, and the 3 demonic beast kings were sent flying into the air. In just a split second, that fist that covered heaven and earth turned into a palm. With a slight move, the 3 monster kings' bloody bodies were pulled back. At this time, the 3 monster kings no longer had any thoughts of resistance. Bai Qing pleaded, "Daoist Xiao, please spare my life. What happened, this little one, is also not clear." That's right. Ni Quan called out in a servile manner, "Just now when the image of the fire pillar appeared, this little one was still worried, so I used my essence force to take a look. The dragon clan is still safe and sound there, father." At this time, suddenly, an ecstatic voice came from underground not far away. Then, another voice calmly called out, "Father, have you escaped?" Goldie. This voice naturally came from the bottom of his heart. Xiao Hua was shocked. He no longer cared about interrogating the 3 monster kings. His other hand grabbed towards the source of the voice. The entire earth shook violently again. Xiao Hua's big hand directly pierced into the ground. When the big hand reached out again, Goldie and Blackie appeared in midair, full of energy. "Father! Goldie shouted and flew towards Xiao Hua. However, when he saw Xiao Hua's huge golden body, he couldn't help but be a little stunned. On the other hand, Blackie seemed very calm. Although he was wagging his tail, he also looked at Xiao Hua's golden body in a daze. If the 2 little ones didn't go through experience, they wouldn't be like this. Xiao Hua was Xiao Hua, their father. However, after more than 200 years of experience, they had a lot of understanding of strength and realm. They also understood that their father couldn't have reached such a high realm in such a short time. Damn it! Seeing that the 2 little ones were safe and sound, Xiao Hua's heart calmed down. Looking at Bai Qing, who was imprisoned by him, he angrily rebuked, "Not only did you tarnish my name, you suppressed my good friend, and you even imprisoned my child. You really deserve to die." As he spoke, he stretched out his right index finger. A thunderbolt like a sword pierced through the air and stabbed towards Bai Qing. "Father, wait." Goldie saw that Xiao Hua was angry and hurriedly shouted again, "Although this monster king suppressed father, oh, no, how could his strength suppress father? Oh, forget it, I don't care. Although this monster king imprisoned the boy, he didn't make things difficult for him. He gave good food and drinks to the boy. It seems that he wants to win over the boy." "Oh." Xiao Hua frowned, and the lightning sword light stopped. The lightning sword light was only a few feet away from Bai Qing's shell, and this distance was no longer enough to block the power of the lightning. The 5-colored halo on his shell had already been shattered, and cracks had appeared on that incomparably hard shell. Obviously, it was injured by his punch just now. What's going on? Although Xiao Hua was furious, he wouldn't force his anger on others and cause misunderstandings. It's like this, Father. Blackie wagged his tail and replied, "We heard that Father was suppressed by this monster king." Then Blackie told the story. After Xiao Hua heard it, he smiled and said, "So, you two don't hate this monster king?" "Of course not. This monster king dared to suppress Father. Naturally, we have to pull out his tendons and skin him alive. However, just from the matter of the boy has nothing to say." Blackie and Goldie answered seriously. Xiao Hua was comforted and nodded. "You two have a clear distinction between love and hate. Father is very happy. You can go home and wait." "Yes, Father." The two reunited with Xiao Hua and were overjoyed. When Xiao Hua shook the Kunlun mirror, they hurriedly flew into the light pillar and landed on Shenhua continent. "Where are the dragons that you suppressed?" Xiao Hua put away the two and turned to look at Bai Qing and asked coldly. This little one really doesn't know." At this time, the 5-colored halo around Bai Qing had dimmed, and his voice was obviously hoarse. "It was here just now." He. Xiao Hua looked at Ni Quan and Peng Jun and laughed. "One is the monster king of Shrouding Sky Ridge, the other is the monster king of Ancient Bell Mountain. I didn't expect that I would be valued by 3 monster kings. This little one is really honored." Senior. Peng Jun was unruly, but at this time, facing the supreme existence of the Mahayana realm in the 3 continents, he really couldn't resist and hurriedly shouted, "This little one really didn't do anything. This little one really doesn't know. Where did that dragon go?" Seeing the 3 monster kings like this, Xiao Hua was also surprised. His soul was somewhat related to Little White Dragon's soul, but after he arrived at Bai Qingyu, he didn't sense Little White Dragon's aura. He previously thought that Bai Qingyu's demon array was brilliant, but now it seemed that Little White Dragon wasn't in Bai Qingyu at all. Moreover, Xiao Hua had already checked within 10,000 miles and also didn't find Little White Dragon's aura. If Little White Dragon hadn't been moved, then Little White Dragon's aura was concealed by a brilliant demon array. BZZZ. Just as Xiao Hua was pondering, a huge rumbling sound came from the sky again. The clouds within 100 miles that had been enveloped by the lightning began to boil once again, and the snowflakes that had begun to drift down disappeared once again. Moreover, this boiling spread out in all directions. In just a few breaths of time, it had reached 1,000 kilometers. Not only that, even after reaching 1,000 kilometers, the storm-like clouds showed no signs of stopping. Strands of light from the moon and stars surged out from the clouds, and the clouds once again spread out to 5,000 kilometers. The starlight and moonlight were like swimming fish, like water and like a painting, gradually overflowing the entire sky. Wisps of starlight and moonlight condensed again, transforming into huge demon runes. The demonic runes emitted a rumbling sound as they gathered at 3 spots in the sky. When the power of the stars and moon reached a certain level, even the heavens and earth began to tremble. 3 enormous vortexes were slowly formed, each of them emitting an enormous aura of desolation. The beams of light from the stars and moon, which were even larger than mountains, shot down, tearing apart the void within a radius of 10,000 miles. Holy Temple Teleportation! Holy Temple Teleportation! Peng Jun's eyes were wild with joy, and he shouted, "Great Holy Temple, a great saint of our monster clan has come. Thank you, Great Holy Temple. Thank you, Saint Ni." Ni Quan tried his best to flap his wings to express his excitement, but unfortunately, under Xiao Hua's restriction, how could he move? He could only shout hysterically, "This little one can finally live to see tomorrow night's starlight." Daoist Master Xiao. Bai Qingyu was ecstatic, but she was also somewhat calm. She said, "This is all a misunderstanding. Everything this little one did before was indeed wrong to Daoist Master Xiao. Now that 3 great saints of our great holy temple have arrived, if nothing unexpected happens, it should be my Bay Saint, Kangyu Skyrock Saint, and Xian Sky Forest Ni Saint. I, Bai Qingyu, unwilling to apologize to Daoist Master Xiao in front of the three great saints. Chapter 4379. This demon king Bai Qing was quite tactful. Seeing the three great sages teleporting over, Xiao Hua was obviously at a disadvantage. Although he didn't know why the three great sages came, since they were here, he naturally had to use this opportunity to find a way out for himself. His words were quite sincere and didn't have any intention of threatening. Instead, he was begging for mercy, giving Xiao Hua a way out. He. Peng Jun sneered. Bai Qing, why do you have to be so humble? Although Daoist Xiao is a human of the 9th grade, my great sage Hall's Sage Peng is also of the 9th grade. In addition to Sage Ni and Sage Bei, it's already clear who will win and who will lose. Even if we fall now, there won't be any survivors among the hundreds of thousands of humans around Bai Qingyu. Isn't it better to let them die with us? Ni Quan looked at Peng Jun in a daze. He didn't know where Peng Jun got his confidence from. And he was also muttering in his heart. If it was just from the purpose of suppressing the little white dragon, he was in the greatest danger, because what he coveted was Xiao Hua's power. He even knew that Shui Mingzi had already killed some human cultivators related to Xiao Hua. And although Peng Jun and Bai Qing had interrogated the little white dragon the most, what they wanted was some information, and it did not involve Xiao Hua's own safety. From his point of view, the one Xiao Hua hated the most should be him. Therefore, he only pondered a little and said with a smile, Daoist Xiao, I advise you to stop here. We don't know your background and have offended you. Daoist Xiao's disciples attacking Bai Qingyu is actually a taboo of our 1000 demons sacred realm. The three great sages shouldn't have come for such a small matter like Bai Qingyu. The war between the human race and the demon race is a big matter. We will admit our mistake in front of the three great sages and ask the three great sages to consider and not report this matter to the Great Sage Hall. Otherwise, not only will the lives of the hundreds of thousands of your disciples be in danger, even the human race of the hidden immortal continent might. This Ni Quan was the most cunning. He didn't mention his own covetousness, instead, he expanded the scope of the matter and directly linked it to the war between the human race and the demon race. Although he didn't mention Xiao Hua, every word was filled with a kind of threat. He was confident that in the face of three great sages, in the face of the risk of being killed, Xiao Hua would definitely make his own choice. Unfortunately, contrary to the three monster kings' expectations, Xiao Hua smiled coldly and ignored them. Instead, he stood there silently and looked at the three enormous vortexes of starlight that had already formed in the sky. These three vortexes were distributed high up in the sky above Bai Qingyu. They were about 1,000 miles apart from each other and surrounded Xiao Hua's golden body in a triangular shape. Right in front of the several 100,000 Fortune Gate disciples' eyes, boom, boom, boom. 3 consecutive thunderous booms sounded as the starlight pillar inside the vortex shone brightly. Along with the starlight pillar was a black and white luster. Then, 3 strands of consciousness that were not weaker than Xiao Hua's rushed out from the starlight vortex, rushing out in all directions like a flash flood. Following the emergence of these strands of consciousness, one of the vortexes spewed out boundless golden light. This golden light landed in the sky and condensed into a several thousand zhong tall golden phantom. The phantom had a golden crown on its head, and when it spread its wings, boundless starlight rushed out from within. It was the outline of a golden-winged great peng. The phantom only appeared for a few breaths, but countless golden spots appeared on the phantom again. As if adding the finishing touch, the phantom emitted a dazzling golden light. This golden light was so resplendent that even Xiao Hua couldn't help but close his eyes. However, even with his eyes closed, the outline of the golden-winged great peng was still imprinted in his mind. When Xiao Hua opened his eyes again, he saw that the dazzling golden phantom had already turned into a living golden-winged great peng. This golden-winged great peng slightly spread its wings, and the golden light was like the rising sun, shining brightly on the earth. A kind of pressure that could make all living things crawl spread out from this dazzling light. Wherever the dazzling light passed, the lightning in the capital Heaven Star formation flickered and then disappeared. Tens of thousands of Fortune Gate's disciples fell from the sky. Not only that, but as the dazzling light flashed, the several thousand zhong tall demonic beast's body rapidly expanded. After countless pillars of starlight fell, it actually expanded to several hundred li, or even 1,000 li. A feeling that was as vast as the heavens came from this golden-winged Great Peng's demonic beast body, and it made people yearn to look up to a tall mountain. This golden-winged Great Peng was the #1 great sage in the 1,000 Demons' sacred ground. At the same time that the golden-winged Great Peng revealed itself, another vortex spewed out light blue strands of light. These strands of light were mixed with a thick gray color. After the strands of light surged out, they did not condense into a phantom like the golden light. Instead, they spread out in all directions. In particular, these strands of light crisscrossed, like a kind of silk net, covering several hundred li of space in a few breaths' time. When the golden-winged Great Peng's demonic beast body appeared, the net also emitted a soft gray halo. This halo floated out from the strands of light like fish scales, and the entire space trembled and distorted under this halo. Boom, boom, boom. Tens of millions of tiny pillars of starlight and moonlight fell from the sky, accurately hitting each of the halos of light. Then, a faint blue light suddenly surged out from within the halos of light, and a huge flying feather void beast was revealed, turning into tens of thousands of fragments. When the faint blue light dimmed, the flying feather void beast had completely recovered. A vast aura that was not weaker than the golden-winged Great Peng's demonic beast body also emerged from its demonic beast body, and swept towards the human cultivators in another direction. This flying feather void beast was the third great sage of the 1,000 Demons' holy land. A 5-colored halo surged out from the last vortex. Needless to say, this was the 5-colored sea god Seashell, the fourth great sage of the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm. However, the appearance of the 5-colored sea god Seashell was different. The 5-colored halo rushed out from the vortex like a stream of light and quickly landed on a small dot in the sky. When all the halos gathered, the space where the small dot was located began to tremble violently. Indescribable fluctuations rushed out in all directions like a windmill. Similarly, the surrounding several hundred li of this light dot was filled with pillars of starlight and moonlight. When the golden-winged Great Peng's golden light appeared, the tens of thousands of small dots began to rotate like a kaleidoscope. Countless halos of light flooded out from the 5-colored light, illuminating the surrounding several hundred li. When the halos of light turned into a huge 5-colored wheel of light, the patterns of a seashell appeared between the light and shadow. A similarly vast aura surged out, and the 5-colored halo withdrew into the seashell, revealing the demonic beast body of the 5-colored sea god Seashell. There were a total of 6 great sages in the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm. Today, half of the great sages were gathered in by Qingyu. This was something that had never happened in the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm before. There was a slight difference in the order in which the 3 great sages appeared, but other than Xiao Hua, the hundreds of thousands of Fortune Gate disciples only saw a flash of light before the 3 great sages' figures appear. Needless to say, the aura of the great sages of the demonic beast race had already shaken their bodies. Nearly 70% of the disciples had already fallen from the sky. Chimpage. The moment the golden-winged Great Peng appeared, a proud golden light flashed in his eyes. He looked at the 2 trembling lightning ships in the sky and said, "Did this great sage see wrongly? There are actually humans invading my demonic beast race's sacred realm?" And they even flew the battleships to the center of the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm? Not only did they invade my demonic beast race's sacred realm, but they also killed my by Qingyu's descendant. The 5-colored sea god Seashell's words were calm, but his tone was filled with anger. This great sage really doesn't know who gave you humans such courage. Was it immortal Emperor Go Chen or Mahavairokanna? Interesting, interesting. The flying feather void beast laughed loudly. This great sage has never seen so many high-level Daoist cultivators before. Even the #1 expert of the Daoist Gate, the Grand Mist Ancestor, didn't have so many disciples, right? It's this Xiao. Xiao Hua sneered in his heart when he saw that the 3 great sages were ignoring him. The first thing they did was to talk about the 200,000 Fortune Gate disciples attacking by Qingyu. He knew the 3 great sages' intentions. His eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the 5-colored sea god Seashell and said, "These are my Fortune Gate disciples. They obeyed my orders and came to massacre Bai Qingyu. What about it? Do you have a problem with that? Hee hee. The five-colored sea god seashell chuckled. As expected of a proud human cultivator, this great sage seems to have seen the grand mist ancestor again. What's your name? This one is Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua pondered for a moment before replying in a neither arrogant nor servile manner. He then looked at the golden-winged Great Peng and cupped his fists. This Xiao only represents myself, not the human race. This time, I came to Bai Qingyu to deal with her. I have no intention of troubling the thousand-beast sacred ground. Although Xiao Hua was furious, he was also furious. He originally wanted to hide behind the scenes to find out the truth, but when he saw Little White Dragon being suppressed and a few of his friends in a desperate situation, he couldn't take it anymore and revealed his true appearance. Once he revealed his true appearance, the truth seemed to stop at what he knew before. Now that the three great sages had appeared, it would be even harder to find the real culprit behind the scenes. However, when he thought about it, Little White Dragon's strength was only at the 5th level, and it was unlikely that the person who wanted to deal with him would be stronger than a beast king. Therefore, Xiao Hua patiently explained. After all, he had massacred the entire Bai Qingyu, and Feng Wu had already become a 7-stars great sage. She might even enter the Great Sage Hall in the future. Xiao Hua didn't want to find trouble for Feng Wu. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua's neither arrogant nor servile attitude was the human race's unique tolerance. In the eyes of the demon race, he was weak. The flying feather void beast glanced at Ni Quan, who was imprisoned by Xiao Hua, and didn't help him. He only smiled and said, "Since you're targeting Bai Qingyu, why did you imprison my beast king? You led more than 200,000 humans to the 1,000-beast sacred ground. Isn't that trespassing on my beast race?" The five-colored sea god Seashell was even more furious. "You're a 9th-level Mahayana cultivator, how can you bully the weak? Moreover, with your cultivation, how can my beast king offend you? Could it be that you've long planned to invade my 1,000-beast sacred ground and took this opportunity to come here?" Chapter 4380. HMPH. The golden-winged Great Peng snorted coldly as it spread its glowing golden wings. Waves of ferocious flames covered the sky as it charged towards the tens of thousands of Fortune Gate's disciples. The golden-winged Great Peng continued, "No matter what the reason is, anyone who dares to invade my 1,000 demons' sacred territory and injure my disciples must be killed." HMPH. Xiao Hua harumphed coldly. He didn't do anything, but the lightning around his golden body suddenly shot out like hundreds of dragons, protecting the tens of thousands of Fortune Gate disciples. Not only did the lightning strike extinguish the ferocious flames, but it also condensed into several dozen jong-wide lightning balls in the air, spinning inexplicably. "Haha, you really do have some tricks up your sleeve. No wonder you dare to show off in my 1,000-beast sacred realm." The golden-winged Great Peng chortled as the space within a radius of 1,000 kilometers began to crack. "Calm down, Holy Peng," the five-colored sea god Seashell said in an indifferent voice. "I'd like to ask this human grand ascension stage being what caused him to bully the weak and kill all of my Beeching and Yua with his hundreds of thousands of disciples. His 200,000 disciples won't be able to escape anyway, and if we force our way in, Immortal Emperor Go Chen and Great Solar will accuse us of bullying him with numbers." "What *T nonsense?" the flying feather void beast retorted coldly. "Humans only know how to sow discord and invert yin and yang. What's there to listen to? Holy Bay, if this bloodbath were to take place on my ancient Bell Mountain, how could I say anything to him?" Xiao Hua was already prepared to fight, but his brows furrowed upon hearing the five-colored sea god Seashell's words. He pondered for a moment before releasing the 3 demon monarchs, and he said, "Your backers are here, so why don't you tell me what they're talking about? I won't wrong a demon, and I won't let a demon go, either. Holy Bay, you have to uphold justice for me." As soon as Bai Qingyu regained her freedom, she immediately flew toward the five-colored sea god Seashell as she continued, "This human grand ascension stage cultivator is bullying the weak, and is accusing me of suppressing him. I'm only a puny demon monarch. How could I dare to oppose a human grand ascension stage cultivator? Boys of my pitiful Bai Qingyu died tragically in the hands of his hundreds of thousands of disciples. Damn it. The five-colored sea god shell said angrily, I asked you to tell me the reason. Why are you saying so many useless things? Yes, I was wrong. Bai Qing faltered slightly upon hearing this before hurriedly replying, I encountered a dragon around 100 years ago, and we had some enmity between us, so I imprisoned him. Who would have thought that this dragon would look exactly like this grand ascension stage being of the human race? On top of that, this dragon called himself Xiao Hua of the human race. How would this lowly one know who he is? I only knew that he had offended me, Bai Qingyu, which was why I suppressed him. I didn't care about what he said at all. But who would have thought that 100 years later, when I was holding a banquet in Bai Qingyu and invited the people of Sky-Concealing Ridge and Ancient Bell Mountain to gather, this grand ascension stage human came to my doorstep. Not only did he rescue that dragon, he even used it as leverage to force me to summon that dragon. Otherwise, you will wash my banquet with blood. Think about it, Bei Sheng. How could this lowly one be a match for this grand ascension stage human? He rescued that dragon without anyone noticing, so where did this lowly one come from? Isn't this? Bai Qing pointed around with a tentacle as she spoke, not only did this grand ascension stage human kill my boy, he also killed all of my friends from Sky-Concealing Ridge and Ancient Bell Mountain. This lowly one and these two demon monarchs were almost killed by him as well. Bei Sheng, Ni Sheng, Peng Sheng, the three of you have to uphold justice for this lowly one. I, Bai Qingyu, no longer exist in the 1,000 demon sacred realm. This is all the doing of the human race. Bai Qing's words were 70% true and 30% false, and she had slightly reversed the cause and effect of this matter. However, it was these changes that had pushed all of the blame onto Xiao Hua and the human race. In the end, it was even suspected that she had instigated a war between the human race and the demon race. Damn it, damn it, damn it. The golden-winged Great Peng roared 3 times, and his voice shook the surroundings. Amidst the thunderous roar, Xiao Hua's indifferent voice rang out, Don't the three of you want to hear what I have to say? The human race has always been good with word. They can even bring the dead back to life. The flying feather void beast chuckled. This holy beast still believes in the words of the demon race. Let me explain. Before Xiao Hua could say anything, Ao Sheng jumped out from the Fortune Gate's disciples and shouted. The 3 great sages had already seen Ao Sheng, and they couldn't help but frown when they saw him. The flying feather void beast calmly asked, Ao Sheng, are you representing the Dragon Island or yourself? Of course I'm representing myself. Ao Sheng naturally knew what the flying feather void beast was implying, and he said, however, Daoist Xiao is the dragon master of my Dragon Island, and I'm sure the Great Holy Hall has already received a message from my Dragon Island. Bai Qingyu knew that Daoist Xiao was the dragon master of my Dragon Island, but she still suppressed a dragon who looked exactly like Daoist Xiao. Where is the dignity of my Dragon Island? I've always wanted to ask the Beast King Bai Qingyu, do you even have my Dragon Island in your eyes? You don't represent the Dragon Island, and you don't have the right to ask. The 5-colored sea god Seashell said indifferently, however, for the sake of the Dragon Island, you can ask. At this point, there's no need to ask anymore. Even though Ao Sheng was facing a great sage of the demon race, and he could barely breathe under the pressure of a great sage, he still had his pride. He calmly replied, because I already know the truth. Since Ni Sheng doesn't believe in the human race, I'll explain it to the 3 great sages. Ao Sheng then explained everything he had learned from Ao Zhantian, as well as how Ao Zhantian had interrogated Shui Mingzi. He then looked at the 3 great sages with a smile and said, 3 great sages, did I make myself clear? Is there anything else you want to ask? Is that so? The 5-colored sea god Seashell looked coldly at Bai Qing and asked. All right, Bei Sheng, I didn't receive any messages from the Dragon Island, so I naturally didn't know that this Grand Ascension Stage human was the Dragon Master of the Dragon Race. A few days ago, a dragon envoy from the Dragon Island came to pass on the Dragon Palace's message. At the time, I was completely baffled, and I hurriedly asked the dragon envoy to identify it. In the end, the dragon envoy said that the dragon I was suppressing wasn't a Dragon Master, and only then did I heave a sigh of relief. Bai Qing replied with a serious expression, As for what the dragon envoy said, some of it is true. For example, I did indeed capture that dragon master. As for the rest, it's all just his wild guesses. How could I possibly risk offending the Dragon Island and provoking a rift between the Dragon Island and the Great Sage Hall? Of course, if this Grand Ascension stage human feels that I've offended him, I'm willing to apologize to him. As he spoke, Bai Qing manifested a 5-colored soul from within the seashell. The soul took the form of a human and bowed toward Xiao Hua. Ni Sheng, this dragon master is exaggerating. Seeing that Xiao Hua was ignoring Bai Qing, Ni Quan hurriedly said, I don't know what he's talking about. I was only invited by Bai Qing to attend the banquet. If what he said was not his guess, then it was the despicable things that this lowly one's descendant of the human race did. This is also a matter of the human race. It has nothing to do with my ancient Bell Mountain or the 1,000 demons sacred realm. Where's your human descendant? The golden-winged Great Peng asked. Well, Ni Quan smiled bitterly. Peng Sage, I have countless human descendants. Who knows where the human descendant he's talking about is? Ao Sheng, there's no proof. Where's that human? Peng Sage looked at Ao Sheng. I've already killed him. Ao Sheng replied indifferently. Silencing him. Ni Sheng smiled. This is a common method used by the human race. I'm not a human. Ao Sheng was furious. I'm a dragon master. You dare to call yourself I in front of this sage? Peng Sage was furious. Even Ao Jiao wouldn't dare, right? As he spoke, a golden light flashed in front of Ao Sheng. Then, a golden claw that was hundreds of feet long grabbed at Ao Sheng's back. Although it was just a shadow, the space around Ao Sheng was completely sealed. Ao Sheng didn't even have the chance to struggle. It was at this moment that the lightning in front of the golden light rumbled. A hand made of lightning appeared and crushed the shackles. Then, it grabbed Ao Sheng and lifted him up into the air, dodging the golden claw. Damn it! The golden-winged Great Peng roared again. Human, it seems like you don't want to return to the hidden immortal continent. Xiao Hua. At this moment, the 5-colored seashell also said coldly, My clan's demon monarch Bai Qingyu has already apologized to you. Isn't it time to settle the matter of you killing my Bai Qingyu boy? When Xiao Hua heard the 3 great sages singing the same tune, he understood that the 3 great sages would definitely side with him. Moreover, as a Mahayana realm cultivator of the human clan, he was a 9th-grade origin energy realm cultivator. This was a huge threat in the eyes of the demon clan. Perhaps the 3 great sages had come here today mainly because of him. They didn't care about Bai Qingyu's matter at all. Their goal was to keep him in the 1,000 demon sacred realm. Of course, at the very least, they wanted his strength to drop by a realm. Ha ha ha. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua looked up to the sky and laughed. There's a saying in the human clan, a powerful dragon can't suppress a snake in its old haunt. Originally, I wanted to give you a proper explanation. Killing Bai Qingyu's demon clan can be considered as venting the anger in my chest. Since you're not afraid of making a big deal out of it, I'll accompany you to the end. It's just 3 great sages of the demon clan. I really don't care about them. While speaking, Xiao Hua suddenly waved his right hand, and the universe in the sleeve technique appeared, instantly enveloping Ni Quan, Bai Qing, and Peng Jun in the air. The 3 great sages were shocked. They didn't expect Xiao Hua to suddenly make a move in front of them. Just as they were about to rebuke him, they heard Xiao Hua shout, Fortune Gate disciples, send troops to the ancient Bell Mountain and Heaven-concealing ridge. First, flatten the ancient Bell Mountain, then destroy Heaven-concealing ridge. P.S. Thank you for the tip in the WeChat group. Although I didn't receive it, I've received your kind intentions. I remember when Buddha Bodhi attained enlightenment, he said to the heavenly demon Hua Le, Namo Metria Buddha, disciple is praying to Buddha here. I implore Buddha to raise his hand. If it's the Buddha kingdom, it should be returned to the Buddha kingdom. If it's the Buddha kingdom, it should be returned to the heavenly demon. Perhaps Zhen's kind intentions are what the 3rd-place candidate needs the most. I thank you for this. Now that I think about it, sometimes human nature can't be tested. Also, everyone worked hard to guess the questions last night. I thank you for this chapter. Of course, There are also many fellow Taoists who supported me, such as habit and nature. Chapter 4381. Yes, flatten the ancient Bell Mountain and annihilate the sky-concealing ridge. The group of Fortune Gate disciples roared. Although their voices were weak, their momentum was unstoppable. Kill! The flying feather void beast was enraged. Without waiting for the golden-winged Great Peng to say anything, it flapped its wings. In the next second, 1,000 li of space around Xiaohua was torn apart, and a spatial storm swept towards Xiaohua. At the same time, it also attacked the Fortune Gate disciples nearby. If others don't bully me, I won't bully others. If others bully me, I will exterminate them. Xiaohua smiled faintly and the Kunlun mirror appeared in his hand. A pillar of light shot into the sky as Wen Chu flew over. As his true energy turned into pearls that filled the sky, the spatial cracks within 1,000 li were instantly mended. A group of Fortune Gate disciples flew away from the Rome Gate. You are. The flying feather void beast was shocked when it saw Wen Chu fly out. Which immortal palace's literary star are you? This Wen Chu is not a literary star, and this immortal realm is not an immortal palace. Wen Chu replied indifferently, this little one is Wen Chu. I like to help when I see injustice, and I hate people who distort right and wrong. Since the great sage of the Great Sage Hall is slandering fellow Daoist Xiao, then this little one has no choice but to help. This little one will fight with you. As he spoke, a boundless pillar of noble qi descended from the sky. Wen Chu had activated his subbody, and it also grew to several tens of thousands of feet tall. He waved his right hand in the air, and a ray of sword light descended like a river towards the flying feather void beast. Damn it! When did so many 9th grade origin Qi masters appear in the human race? The flying feather void beast sensed the sharpness of the sword light and cursed. It flapped its wings and disappeared into the void, while its sharp claws slapped the air. Rumble. The space rumbled like the sea, and layers of spatial cracks formed into waves of qi that rushed towards Wen Chu pa. The spatial cracks like a snowstorm drowned the sword light, and the entire sky was filled with the sound of spatial explosions. When the sword light destroyed the spatial cracks, it also destroyed itself. Every time the sword light and spatial crack was destroyed, it would create waves of qi that covered the sky and earth, surging everywhere within 1,000 li. What a powerful aura! Wen Chu narrowed his eyes and said coldly, you are indeed a great sage of the demon clan. Even though the space crack had been destroyed, the sword light was still surging towards him. However, so what if he's a great saint? My heart is magnanimous, and I use my will to communicate with the heavens and earth. My sword is traceless, and I use justice to destroy evil. Wen Chu's voice was like the hum of a sword. He waved the sword in his hand 3 times, and countless pillars of energy fell from the void. Along with the sword energy, they sealed the space within hundreds of miles. As the sword energy soared into the sky, Jioming and Wen Chu's poems and essays released a righteous song that shook the heavens and earth. This sword of justice carried the boundless righteousness of literature as it pounced towards the flying feather void beast. Ka-cha-cha, ka-cha-cha. The roaring space qi exploded and collided with the sword hair seal. At the same time, the space cracks were torn apart, and the poem condensed by the inscription armor was also hit by the space force. It turned into a stroke and disappeared in the air. Mph, you are indeed a human Confucian cultivator. This is the first time this saint has seen such loyalty. The flying feather void beast's voice rang out in the void, and the arrogance in its voice had lessened by 30%. Clearly, this trial strike had allowed it to see that Wen Chu's strength was on par with its. When Wen Chu heard the flying feather void beast's voice, he clenched his right hand into a fist and punched the void without hesitation. This fist wasn't simple at all. Where the fist landed, the fragile space was torn apart once more. Countless pillars of vast energy rushed into the fist through the cracks. It was only a distance of 100 miles, so the fist arrived in a flash. In the blink of an eye, the fist had transformed from 100 feet in size to a meteor-like object. Boom! With a loud bang, the space dozens of miles in size was shattered by Wen Chu's punch. As the space cracks spread, circles of space collapsed, and Wen Chu's fist punched deeply into the void. Ha ha! The flying feather void beast's voice rang out again behind Wen Chu. Its laughter was full of mockery. Human, who do you think you are facing? How can this kind of attack be a match for this saint? Wen Chu smiled and withdrew his fist. He glanced around with bright eyes. He knew that this flying feather void beast was proficient in spatial arts. Although it didn't release its domain, it could move freely in this space. If Wen Chu didn't have any other means, he could only use his domain to suck it in. Only then would he have a way to deal with it. But the other party was a great saint of the demon race. In terms of strength, it was only stronger than him, and it was also proficient in spatial magic. It was unlikely that he could suck it into his space. He could only think of other ways. Wen Chu thought for a moment and opened his mouth to recite, Zhao Ke's beard tassels, Wu Go's frost and snow. Silver saddle on white horse, valiant as a meteor. As the poem was recited, countless pillars of air and chi fell from the inscriptions on the armor. Then, the figure of a knight on a white horse appeared in the sky. The white horse galloped, and the sound of the horse's hooves was very clear in the sky. Oh my God, you really scared this saint. The flying feather void beast was about to burst out laughing in the void. He shouted, You actually used such a method to fight this saint. Do you think this is a game for you humans? As he spoke, the nearby space rippled again. Space bubbles big enough to collapse mountains rushed out of the void and rushed toward the white horse. Ta ta ta. The sound of the white horse's hooves was still crisp, and it was still calm. No matter how the bubbles burst, the saint easily steered the white horse to avoid them. Although the airwaves blew the saint's clothes askew, the saint's eyes were as tenacious as Wen Chu's. The flying feather void beast suddenly had a bad feeling. Although the knight on the white horse was just charging straight ahead, he always felt that the knight on the white horse's eyes were locked on him. A kind of fear that he had never faced before gradually approached his heart. Damn it! The flying feather void beast muttered in a low voice. As its feathers swayed, a spatial storm dozens of miles away was set off, and it fiercely rushed toward the saint. At this point, the flying feather void beast no longer dared to treat the saint as a battle puppet. Ha ha, killing one in 10 steps, leaving no trace for 1,000 miles. When the deed is done, leave with a flick of your sleeves, hide your identity and reputation. Wen Chu saw the flying feather void beast attack, and as he chanted, the flying sword in his hand slashed down again. The sword light was different from before. The sword light illuminated the night sky, and it split into countless sword hairs, each one sharp and unshakable. When the sword hairs fell on the spatial storm, all of the spatial cracks were split in half. There was no exception. What surprised the flying feather void beast the most was that the sword hairs, which were originally split up, suddenly flew up again after the spatial storm was suppressed, and suddenly pierced into the void. The flying feather void beast was a little stunned. What's going on? But a moment later, the flying feather void beast came to its senses and laughed loudly. Its laughter echoed in the air, and it was impossible to find its specific location. The human race is really cunning. I was just trying to lure this saint into a trap, but you actually went so far. Ouch! Just when the flying feather void beast thought that it had seen through Wen Chu's trick, the knight on the white horse suddenly turned around and pulled out a bright sword from his back. He then slashed down at a place below him. The flying feather void beast was shocked. Wasn't the place where he was hiding? Just as the flying feather void beast was shocked, Wen Chu raised his hand and slapped the top of his head. Boom! A stream of Xiantian true chi spewed out, and the heaven and earth pagoda appeared in the cloud. The heaven and earth pagoda appeared in the sky, and immediately emitted a bright brilliance. This brilliance scattered all over the space where the flying feather void beast was hiding. Along with this brilliance, countless streams of noble chi fell and quickly condensed in the space within 1,000 miles. An unparalleled wave of true chi came from the heaven and earth pagoda, and at the top of the space, a blue sea-like sky was born, completely covering the space. Below the space, a wasteland like earth was also born, echoing the sky and confining the entire space. When this confinement was born, a wave of ripples swept down from the sky to the ground, and the flying feather void beast's figure was revealed behind this ripple. Until now, the flying feather void beast's face was still full of disbelief. He really couldn't believe that Wen Chu could actually identify his tracks with a saint on a white horse. Eat my sword. Wen Chu didn't give the flying feather void beast too much time. As soon as his figure appeared, he immediately released the flying sword that had been accumulating power for a long time. Boom! The flying sword fell like a meteor, dragging a dazzling brilliance behind it as it pierced towards the flying feather void beast. The huge roar was deafening even under the suppression of the heaven and earth pagoda. Chempage. The flying feather ni space beast snorted coldly. It twisted its body, and the tail on its back smashed through the air. The huge shadow was like a mountain range. Even the heaven and earth pagoda above the flying feather ni space beast's head trembled slightly when the shadow moved. Clang! The flying sword hit the flying feather void beast's tail, and tens of thousands of sparks flew. At the same time that Wen Chu's flying sword was sent flying, more than 10 cracks appeared on the flying feather void beast's tail. There was still a lot of sword chi between these cracks, which was madly worshipping the demon runes around the flying feather void beast, wanting to rush into its body. Seeing that the flying sword was ineffective, Wen Chu's figure flashed, and he turned into a stream of light and rushed up. As he waved his fists, the noble chi pillar fell again, and along with Wen Chu's fist, rushed towards the flying feather void beast. "Ha, human, you're too bold. You actually dare to compete with a great saint of the demon race?" The flying feather void beast laughed loudly, spread its wings, and also waved its front claws to meet Wen Chu. Although the nearby space was sealed by the heaven and earth pagoda, a star mark appeared on the flying feather void beast's chest. Endless power of the stars and moon came from that star mark and rushed towards Wen Chu, its power no less than Wen Chu's. Chapter 4382. Boom, boom, boom. Wen Chu and the flying feather void beast clashed in close combat. Shockwaves that could destroy a mountain peak surged out one after another, tearing apart the space within several thousand miles. However, the shattered space quickly recovered under the suppression of the heaven and earth pagoda. Putting aside the fact that Wen Chu was fighting the flying feather void beast, the two 9th grade essence power great masters were evenly matched. Just the fact that as Wen Chu flew out, the golden-winged great rock's sharp eyes had already clearly seen the true form of Xiao Hua's transcendent artifact. He sneered, "Kunlun mirror? No wonder you could bring several 100,000 disciples to Bai Qingyu. So you have this treasure." After saying that, the golden-winged great Peng's gaze turned towards the 5-colored sea god seashell. Although they were several hundred miles apart, the 5-colored sea god seashell could clearly see the golden-winged great Peng's gaze. 9th grade cultivators of the 3 continents were the foundation of the confrontation between the various forces. Just like how the Fortune Gate's 200,000 nascent soul realm disciples had attacked Bai Qingyu. Although Bai Qingyu's demonic beast clan was completely annihilated, as long as the 5-colored sea god seashell appeared, these 200,000 nascent soul realm disciples were nothing but dust. Only Xiao Hua, who was a 9th grade cultivator, was a match for the 5-colored sea god seashell. The sudden appearance of a grand ascension stage cultivator like Xiao Hua had already shocked the golden-winged great Peng. Now, Xiao Hua's Kunlun mirror actually flew out of the 5-colored sea god seashell. In an instant, the balance between the human and demonic beast clans was broken. Although the 2 great sages of the demonic beast clans didn't take Bai Qingyu's matter seriously, the matter between the human and demonic beast clans didn't allow them to have other thought. They only had killing intent in their hearts. Almost without hesitation, the 5-colored sea god seashell sneered, "Cunning human, hurry up and release my clan's juniors, or don't blame this great sage for being impolite. Xiao Hua, how did my clan's juniors offend you? How dare you capture them in front of this great sage? Hurry up and release them, or don't blame this great sage for taking action." The golden-winged great Peng also scolded. Xiao Hua had ordered more than 200,000 Fortune Gate disciples to flatten the sky-concealing ridge and ancient Bell Mountain, and the only taboo was the 3 demonic beast kings. How could he release them? When he heard the 2 great sages' words, he laughed loudly. When did the demonic beast clan learn how to hide? Don't you just want to join forces to kill this Xiao? Why are you saying so many sanctimonious things? Kill. The five-colored sea god seashell roared furiously. 5 colors blossomed around its body like fireworks, and the brilliance that covered 1,000 miles rushed towards Xiaohua. Boom! Xiaohua pretended to shake the Kunlun mirror, and another pillar of light shot up into the sky. A figure flashing with green light flew out with an emerald soul armament in his hand. It was Daoist Wu. Daoist, which landed in mid-air, and his soul strands flickered inexplicably. Countless ghost-like wails and wolf-like howls came from the void. As the sound became louder and louder, Daoist Witch's body also expanded by 1,000 feet. In the end, he was hundreds of miles in size like a 5-colored seashell. You. The 5-colored sea god seashell said you 3 times in a row, but in the end, it couldn't reveal Daoist Witch's origin. Because even with the 5-colored sea god seashell's great sage ability, it couldn't tell whether Daoist Witch was a human or a demonic beast. Daoist Witch's eyes were dark green, and his face was also formed by soul strands. The 5-colored sea god seashell could only see boundless primordial strange scenes on his face, and couldn't see his true appearance at all. Daoist Witch cupped his hands and said, "I am a shaman." Sigh. Hearing the word shaman, not only the 5-colored sea god seashell, but even the golden-winged great Peng sucked in a breath of cold air. An ancient memory and the ancient records of the great sage hall rushed into their minds. However, in just a moment, the 5-colored halo around the 5-colored sea god seashell calmed down, and it said coldly, "You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. How dare you call yourself a shaman? Today, I'll teach you a lesson." Ha ha! Daoist Witch was so angry that he laughed. He waved the subbrush in his hand, and in his laughter, countless green seal characters surged out and turned into 3 corpses yin thunder that roared within 1,000 miles. He said, "You're just a great sage of the demon clan, and you haven't even taken off your shell. How dare you boast so shamelessly? I was born in heaven and earth, and I obtained Tao from heaven and earth. I'm a shaman. How can you not know this? You don't even have Dharma eyes. How can you see eyes' origin? Damn it, damn it." The 5-colored sea god seashell had always been proud of its monster body. It had never heard someone mocking it like this before. With a furious roar, the unbelievably huge seashell spread out in the sky, covering the sun and moon. The 5-colored halo even shrouded everything within 1,000 miles. Without giving Daoist Witch any chance to struggle, the seashell immediately grabbed him and dragged him into its 5-colored domain. Within the 5-colored domain, all the essence of heaven and earth was imprisoned. All the spiritual power and true chi that belonged to the 5 elements were subdued. Apart from the faint halo that still gave off a dreamlike grandeur, Daoist Witch's voice sounded erratic. Daoist Witch had a faint smile on his face as he watched the 5-colored light fill his body. The light flashed with inexplicable patterns. Then he opened his mouth and hundreds of green seal characters flew out. Once the green seal characters flew out, they immediately screamed. The sound was distorted in the domain, but the power of gods and ghosts completely ignored the 5-colored domain. The green seal characters quickly combined and evolved in the domain until they turned into a huge green seal character. The moment the green seal character appeared, the entire 5-colored domain began to shake violently. Streaks of dark green lightning appeared strangely and spread in all directions. The extreme dark green lightning was even brighter than the 5 colors of the domain. The extreme shaking was even more violent than normal lightning. Wherever the lightning went, the 5-colored domain's light was wiped out and the space's imprisonment collapsed. Strands of essence of heaven and earth slowly entered the domain. Damn it, how could this be? In the 5-colored sky, the voice of the 5-colored sea god shell was like that of a god, echoing everywhere within 1,000 miles. Then, in the places where the lightning hadn't reached yet, all the 5-colored illusions appeared. They were waves, mountains, members of the sea clan, and even the sea clan. These illusions made all kinds of noises and rushed towards the lightning from all directions. Rumble. The entire domain began to shake and layers of bubble-like holes spread in all directions. Wherever the holes went, the 5-colored lights and the lightning were all sucked in and annihilated. Ha ha! Daoist Witch looked up and laughed. He opened his mouth and spat out hundreds of green seal characters. Waves of mysterious sounds rang out and more three corpses yin thunder appeared out of thin air. Whoosh! Seeing that Daoist Witch's three corpses yin thunder wasn't part of the five elements and that his five-colored halo couldn't destroy it, the five-colored sea god Beitong also sneered. However, he saw a spike protruding from Daoist Witch's back and stabbing towards Daoist Witch's back without any sound. However, when the spike was 10 feet away from Daoist Witch, his body suddenly shook and his back turned into his chest. Daoist Witch raised his hand and the subbrush touched the tip of the spike. Whoosh! It seemed like water, like flowers blooming, or even like the exuberance of spring. A tiny green dot came out of the spike. Although the dot was tiny, it was as majestic as a world. In the five-colored sea god seashell's domain, the almost omnipotent spike couldn't move it. The spike made a roaring sound and couldn't move an inch forward no matter what. The green color even started to spread again and corrode the depths of the spike. The spike had no choice but to use its five-colored light to fight against it. Damn it, I don't believe it. Within this saint's domain, this saint can't do anything to you. The five-colored sea god shell seemed to have never been defeated like this before. It roared angrily and no longer cared about the realm that was destroyed by the three corpses' dark thunder at the edge of the space. Instead, tens of millions of spikes appeared around Taoist Witch. These spikes were of different sizes and length. Each spike carried a five-colored halo and the will of the five-colored sea god shell. They all pierced towards Taoist Witch's Dharmakaya. Green light flashed in Daoist Witch's eyes and he saw the tens of millions of spikes. The tip of each spike had the hideous smile of the five-colored sea god seashell. Each spike was a clone of the five-colored sea god seashell. Daoist Witch knew that if he was stabbed by the spike, his body would be destroyed by the five-colored light and his will would be controlled by the will of the five-colored sea god seashell. However, the green light in Daoist Witch's eyes flashed with a hint of mockery. He really wanted to know how the five-colored Neptune shell would feel if it found out that he was just a clone of Xiao Hua when it rushed into his mind. However, this was merely a thought in Daoist Witch's mind. Daoist Witch was different from when he left the three continents. The essence of his physical body was sufficient and was even 100 times stronger than ordinary cultivators. He had become an independent individual. He couldn't take a huge risk and take an unconventional approach. After all, he had many methods to deal with the great saint of the demon race. Daoist Witch closed his eyes slightly. Boom! Green seal scripts appeared on the surface of his body and spun. They left his body and condensed into a huge light shadow a few miles to the left of Daoist Witch. This light shadow wasn't a magic array or a human. It was the image of God Shibai with a human head and a beast's body and two green snakes on his ears. This light shadow rippled slightly on the surface of Daoist Witch's body and then retracted. As the light shadow fell on the surface of Daoist Witch's body, Daoist Witch's human form transformed into God Shibai. At this moment, tens of millions of spikes had already landed on Daoist Witch's body. What puzzled the five-colored sea god seashell was that Daoist Witch didn't have any way to defend himself. He just let the spikes get close to him. A strange feeling suddenly arose in the five-colored sea god seashell's heart. Chapter 4383. However, as soon as the spikes pierced into Shibai's body, Daoist Witch let out a deep roar. The roar seemed to come from the abyss, yet it also seemed to come from the sky. At the same time, Shibai's light figure began to tremble violently. Along with the trembling, an unparalleled bloodline power was born from the light figure of Shibai. Wherever the spikes pierced into, the green seal script turned into tiny whirlpools. The bloodline power flowed through the spikes and rushed into the body of the five-colored sea god shell. Woo! The entire five-colored sea god shell turned upside down. A huge five-colored halo appeared from afar. It was the primordial spirit of the five-colored sea god shell. Oh no! The five-colored sea god shell was shocked. He didn't expect Daoist Witch to have such an unfathomable ability. His biggest reliance was the five-colored halo. This halo contained the truth of the five elements. Everything in the world would be restrained by this five-colored halo. Unfortunately, Daoist Witch's ability was a soul cultivator. It had nothing to do with the 5 elements. Even the YA brush was a brush of life. It didn't belong to the 5 elements either. That was why the 5-colored sea god shell's ability failed. In addition to the 5-colored halo, one of the divine powers of the 5-colored seashell was the 5-colored realm. The realm was bordered by the shell of the seashell. Any cultivator, whether human or demon, who was enveloped by the realm, would be isolated from the outside world. Even if the great sage of the demon tribe had the star mark, it would be extremely difficult for him to escape from the realm. The golden-winged great roc once fell into the sea god shell and spent a lot of effort to escape. Unfortunately, the 5-colored sea god shell didn't know that Daoist Witch had obtained the inheritance of the 13 great gods of Meng Mountain. Shi Bai's bloodline power was one of them. When the 5-colored sea god shell trapped Daoist Witch in its 5-colored sea god shell, it isolated Daoist Witch from the outside world. However, it also exposed its primordial spirit to Daoist Witch. Although his original body was everywhere in this 5-colored domain, his actions were tantamount to inviting a wolf into the house when faced with the bloodline power of a 9th-grade elemental force. Therefore, when Daoist Witch activated his bloodline power, the 5-colored sea god shell hid his primordial spirit very well. All illusions were useless in front of the ubiquitous bloodline power. Daoist Witch's primordial spirit was easily pulled out his primordial spirit. The 5-colored sea god seashell was really scared out of his wits. At this moment, his primordial spirit was hundreds of miles away from Taoist sorcerer. However, this distance was nothing in the eyes of the great sage of the demon clan. Almost without hesitation, the bloodline primordial spirit general opened its mouth and a pillar of 5-colored brilliance shot into the sky, piercing straight towards Daoist Witch's head. Daoist Witch was Daoist Witch was Daoist Witch was Daoist Witch. Daoist Witch wasn't afraid at all. He waved his hand and the YA brush waved in front of his eyes. A picture of plum blossoms suddenly appeared. The plum blossoms seemed to come alive as the YA brush was lifted. They expanded rapidly and covered hundreds of miles of space in an instant. The plum blossoms on the plum blossoms contained endless vitality. When the murderous light beam landed on the plum blossoms, it turned into nothing. Although the light beam was so powerful that the plum blossom's vitality couldn't completely destroy it, the 5-colored sea god shell's primordial spirit dimmed in the explosion. On the other side, Daoist Witch also opened his mouth. Whoosh! The thick green light beam condensed into the shape of a flying sword. It pierced through space and flew towards the primordial spirit in the distance. Catcher! Seeing the soul sword fly out, the 5-colored sea god shell felt a sense of danger from his soul. He didn't dare to be careless. He couldn't care less about his primordial spirit being restrained by Daoist Witch's bloodline power. He hurriedly activated the power of space and layers of 5-colored spatial barriers appeared. However, the barriers were transparent in front of the soul sword. The soul sword wasn't restricted by the power of space at all. It forced its way towards the primordial spirit even faster than lightning. Faced with such a strange soul cultivator's attack, the 5-colored sea god seashell could only dodge. However, his primordial spirit was controlled by the power of Taoist Witch's bloodline. Not only could he not dodge, he was also pulled towards the soul sword. At this point, the 5-colored sea god seashell didn't dare to hold back anymore. Boom! With a loud sound, the 5-colored halos within thousands of miles suddenly surged and the entire 5-colored realm collapsed. As the starlight shone high up in the sky, 2 giant shells engraved with mysterious ultimacy shook in the distance. Taoist Witch sensed that his bloodline power had missed. Similarly, where the soul sword landed, rings of 5-colored halos bloomed like flowers. However, the soul sword couldn't break through the defense of the 5-colored sea god seashell. Daoist Witch didn't dare to be careless. He hurriedly kept his soul sword. Then, he raised his hand and imitated Xiao Hua. Boom! A bunch of green seal text rushed into the sky, and countless godly and ghostly sounds reverberated within a 1,000-mile radius. The green seal text landed on Daoist sorcerer's body, and great god Shi Bai's image changed again. He turned into the image of great god Dejiang with a human face, a bird's body, 4 wings on his back, and 6 claws on his chest, abdomen, and legs. As great god Dejiang was born, Daoist which suddenly flashed and flew to the sky above the five-colored seashell. Daoist which waved his 6 claws, and a dark green brilliance shrouded thousands of miles in starlight. A space domain was formed. Great god Dejiang had the power of space. Daoist which used the power of space to trap the great saint of the demon race in the 5-colored sea god shell. The 5-colored sea god shell was lured away by Daoist which. Only Golden Wing Great Peng and Xiao Hua were left in the sky. Golden Wing Great Peng wasn't in a hurry to attack. Instead, he coldly looked at the 2 groups and said to Xiao Hua, "Human Great Ascension Stage, you're quite capable. You were able to recruit so many experts. It seems that this saint underestimated you." Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said flatly, "It's nothing. They're just my avatars. Ha ha." The golden-winged great rock raised his head and laughed loudly. "You might be able to fool a 7th-grade origin energy kid with such a crude lie, but if you bring it to us, the great sages of the demon race, wouldn't you be looking down on us? No matter how exquisite your Dao techniques are, how can you refine another Confucian avatar with the same cultivation level as you? Even the most wondrous avatar technique of the demon race can't refine so many completely independent avatars." Hee hee. Xiao Hua smiled but did not reply. The golden-winged Great Peng thought that he had exposed Xiao Hua's lie and said, "You don't have to hide anything. Your human race has secretly nurtured so many supreme cultivators. What exactly are you planning? If this saint hadn't come to Bai Qingyu on a whim today, I really wouldn't have thought that the demon race would covet the 1,000-demon sacred realm before the battle between immortals and Buddhas has ended." Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. He couldn't explain it. It was originally a very simple matter, but when it came from the mouth of the first great saint of the demon race, it immediately became too complicated. It actually reached the level of a war between the demon race and the demon race. "Do you want to answer now? Or do you want to wait until this saint kills you?" Golden Wing Great Peng asked coldly. Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't answer, Golden Wing Great Peng spread his wings. Seeing that the space around the golden-winged great rock had already formed countless tiny whirlpools and streams of moonlight were pouring out, Xiao Hua naturally knew that this question was merely a challenge. Today's battle was already unavoidable. "Let's fight." Xiao Hua spat out 2 words faintly. Then his figure flashed, turning into lightning and rushing towards Golden Wing Great Peng. The wishful staff in his hand had already been swung out. The golden-winged Great Peng had been accumulating power for a long time. When it saw Xiao Hua flying over, it spread its wings, and its entire body turned into a stream of light. Its 2 golden claws carried the power of heaven and earth, and the aura of a great sage, as it descended from the sky towards Xiao Hua's head. Boom! The wishful steel staff hit the golden claw, but a small crack appeared on the golden claw. Several unmatched forces poured out from the cracks of the claw. Xiao Hua's wishful steel staff flew diagonally with the golden light. Xiao Hua's body was hit by the demon body of the golden-winged giant Peng bird. Damn it! Xiao Hua cursed. He knew that his magical power was not the opponent of the first master of the demon race. Then he grabbed with both hands. Boom! The thick 9th heaven divine thunder turned into a thunder sword in Xiao Hua's hand. Looking at the golden wing Great Peng's figure, which was more ferocious than a mountain, Xiao Hua stretched out his hand. The thunder cut through the sky and hit the wings of the golden wing Great Peng. Boom! Where the lightning landed, the golden-winged rock's body was stopped. Although its wings, which seemed to be made of gold, were bombarded into a mess by the lightning, the golden light that overflowed once again annihilated the lightning. Damn it! The feathers of the golden-winged Great Peng were disheveled. He couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed and angry. He also cursed and flapped his wings. Woo-woo! A hurricane was born, blowing the space within 1,000 miles until it collapsed. The powerful hurricane landed on Xiao Hua's body. Not only did it cause his protective light to sway, but it also made it impossible for him to stand steadily in the air. He was about to fall into the distance. But just as Xiao Hua's figure was just out of balance and fell into the hurricane. Whoosh! Suddenly, Xiao Hua's body flashed with a light blue brilliance. Then Xiao Hua urged the wind escape technique. Against the wind, he approached the golden wing Great Peng in the blink of an eye. Oh! Seeing that Xiao Hua actually knew the wind escape technique, the golden wing Great Peng was a little surprised. However, he was not afraid of anything. With a flap of his right wing, it seemed as if the entire sky was collapsing as he smashed towards Xiao Hua. Rumble! The golden-winged rock's right wing had only just flapped when Xiao Hua first moved. As his hands rubbed, thousands of crystal lights fell into the air, and layers of divine lightning from the 9 heavens were born from the top of his head, rushing towards the golden-winged rock like a mountain flood. Moreover, just as the lightning poured down, Xiao Hua waved his hands slightly again. Hundreds of strands of 4-colored spiritual fire were caught in the lightning and rushed towards the golden wing Great Peng. P.S. Thank you, Mr. Xian Qing, for representing all the fellow Taoists. Thank you, fellow Taoists, for your support. Chapter 4384. The golden-winged rock's right wing had already flapped out. The space within a few hundred li had just collapsed when it was immediately covered by the lightning tide, disappearing without a trace in a few breaths of time. As for the golden-winged rock, the golden light in its eyes flickered. Gah! With a clear cry, its entire demonic body suddenly retreated, and its pair of golden wings flapped again. This time was different from before. Not only did the wings burst forth with a pillar of starlight, the innate demonic characters on the feathers also appeared. Along with the flapping of the wings, there were also tens of millions of golden lights that either condensed into flying swords or sharp thorns, attacking the lightning tide like a storm. Boom! 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 An explosion that was even more violent than the other two battles shook the sky thousands of miles away. Gah! The golden-winged rock let out another sharp cry. Its wings flapped, and its entire demonic body flew out from the explosion, attacking Xiao Hua. Clearly, it wanted to take advantage of the victory to pursue and attack. How could Xiao Hua not know what it was thinking? Seeing its demonic body appear, Xiao Hua raised his hand and waved it. Once again, an extremely large amount of lightning condensed into a huge fist and struck down. Seeing that it had just flown past the explosion and was about to be hit by a fist, the golden-winged great rock opened its mouth. Woo! A golden beam of light shot out and hit the fist. With a loud bang, the fist was shattered, and the lightning scattered everywhere. That golden pillar of light was also annihilated in midair. Gah! The golden-winged rock flew out proudly. Boom boom boom! Another few faint sounds of fire whistling rang out. Between the golden-winged rock's wings, abdomen, and other parts, they were all ignited by the 4-colored spiritual fire. Ha ha! Xiao Hua laughed. The large hand that was originally going to attract the golden-winged rock's attention dissipated in midair, and he raised his hand again to prepare a transcendent artifact. How is this possible? Seeing its own golden feathers actually melting under the 4-colored spiritual fire, and the demonic characters on its abdomen feathers being annihilated by the 4-colored spiritual fire, the golden-winged rock almost didn't dare to believe its own eyes. He hurriedly retreated and flapped his wings again. Beams of starlight and moonlight and demonic runes surged, trying to destroy the 4-colored spiritual fire. Unfortunately, when all the power of the stars and moon and the demonic runes landed on the 4-colored spiritual fire, not only was it unable to extinguish the spiritual fire, but it also made the spiritual fire even more vigorous. Furthermore, the violent hurricane was unable to extinguish the 4-colored spiritual fire. The 4-colored spiritual fire was like a maggot that followed the golden-winged rock closely. Hand over your life. Seeing the golden-winged rock in panic, Xiao Hua roared and waved his hand, releasing the Death Spirit Origin light. Boom! The thing with a nose and eyes appeared on the sword gourd, and then the Death Spirit Origin light also soared into the sky, falling towards the golden-winged rock's neck. Swoosh! At this moment, the golden crown on the golden-winged rock's head emitted a golden light. This golden light was oval in shape and covered the golden-winged rock's head. When the Death Spirit Origin light landed on this golden light, it was unable to cut down anymore. Chmph! The golden-winged rock snorted coldly again, and a layer of strange demonic characters appeared on its demonic body again. After this demonic character appeared, A phantom of the golden-winged rock was born, like a molted shell. And the real demonic body had clearly shrunk by one size. Although it was only a space of a few miles, the four-colored spiritual fire was actually unable to pass through the phantom formed by the demonic characters. Whoosh! Seeing that the demonic characters were effective, the golden-winged rock immediately flew and escaped from the shell. Looking at the demonic character shell again, in just a few breaths, it had already been completely engulfed by the four-colored spiritual fire. Huff! The golden-winged rock let out a long breath, and the flashing golden eyes revealed an ominous glint. Looking at Xiao Hua in the distance, it was about to attack again. Suddenly, the golden-winged rock was stunned. The golden light in its eyes suddenly converged, and then circles of golden light shot out from its eyes. What was extremely strange was that where the golden light fell, the space seemed to be washed by a rainstorm, and the scenery changed. When the mist covering the scenery was lifted, the golden-winged rock was surprised to find that the previous four-color spirit fire was not extinguished at all, but it was frantically burning its wings and beastkin body. Looking at Xiao Hua in the distance, he was holding the sword gourd in his left hand, and he was making gestures again. There was a mirage butterfly on his shoulder, and there was also a trace of surprise on his face. It turned out that everything just now was just an illusion created by the dream mirage butterfly. Xiao Hua wanted to use this illusion to let the four-colored spiritual fire completely kill the golden-winged rock. Unfortunately, the golden-winged rock was really powerful, and this illusion was still discovered by it. However, the golden-winged rock did not have time to think too much, because at the same time that the illusion disappeared, a golden light fell from the sky along with Xiao Hua's seal again. This golden light was so sharp that even the golden-winged rock could not help but be startled. The golden-winged rock could not care about the four-colored spiritual fire around its body. Its figure hurriedly shook towards the sky, and huge phantoms instantly appeared in the air. The golden-winged rock's astonished expression could be seen clearly in each of the phantoms. Shua! There was a soft sound, like rain falling on banana leaves. The golden light of the soaring dragon scissors fell, and each of the phantoms was cut with a bloody mark. Gah! In the sky above 100 miles, the golden-winged rock's mournful cry suddenly sounded. A string of golden blood drops fell with the wind. The soaring dragon scissors had succeeded in one strike. Xiao Hua could not believe his eyes. This was the strongest expert of the demon clan. How could it be so easily injured by him? However, at this time, Xiao Hua could not care so much. He raised his hand and the soaring dragon scissors turned into a dragon again. The dragon's tail moved high in the sky, and like lightning, it struck the golden-winged rock again. Meanwhile, his figure soared into the sky, and the thunderous hand struck towards the golden-winged great rock like a meteor. Whether it was the soaring dragon scissors or the big hand, they had already stirred up the surrounding hundreds of miles of space. When the heaven-earth Yuan Qi fell, the brilliance of the stars and the moon was mixed in. Waves of black and white void power also came to join in the fun. It was really a scene of chaos. Shua! There was no surprise. The soaring dragon scissors once again struck the golden-winged rock's body, and another drop of golden blood fell. At the same time, Xiao Hua's thunder hand also hit the golden-winged rock's body. The several hundred miles of demonic body was hit by the big hand, and the four-colored spiritual fire had already completely covered the golden-winged rock's demonic body. Damn it! In the flames, the golden-winged rock's eyes were still golden like lightning, and it looked at Xiao Hua fiercely. Xiao Hua's face was innocent. He shrugged his huge shoulders and said with a smile, "The rock sage is well aware that this matter was stirred up by the demon clan of the Thousand Demon Sacred Realm. It has nothing to do with this Xiao. If anything happens to the rock sage, I'll send the demon monarch of the sky concealing ridge to accompany you. I won't let you be too lonely in the afterlife." Ha ha! The horror on the golden-winged rock's face suddenly disappeared, and it laughed heartily. A mere grand ascension stage human dares to boast so shamelessly? You think you can do anything to me with these puny spiritual fire of yours? As it spoke, the four-colored spiritual fire began to burn brightly, completely beyond Xiao Hua's control. Not good. How could Xiao Hua not know that the golden-winged rock had already come up with a countermeasure? The four-colored spiritual fire was extremely strange, and even Xiao Hua himself didn't know how to deal with it. He didn't think that the golden-winged rock would be able to break free. Now that the soaring dragon scissors had failed, Xiao Hua could only use the demonic saber slaughter. A ferocious light flashed through Xiao Hua's eyes as he raised his left arm slightly, and a layer of crimson light emerged from his left hand. It was also at this moment that the golden-winged rock let loose a mournful cry. Within the four-colored spiritual fire, the golden-winged rock suddenly disappeared, and its entire demonic body transformed into a layer of crimson light. The crimson light surged like demonic blood and rapidly expanded, instantly creating a gap in the four-colored spiritual fire. Then, without waiting for Xiao Hua to take any action, a loud bang resounded, and a pillar of blood-colored brilliance soared into the sky. It was no less than 30,000 meters high. Furthermore, there were crimson threads seeping through the gaps between the four-colored spiritual fire. This is... Xiao Hua was completely dumbstruck as he stared at the pillar of crimson light with a perplexed expression. However, several breaths later, another bird cry rang out, and this cry was filled with joy and relief. Following this cry, a crimson projection that was only 1,000 feet in size appeared at the top of the pillar of crimson light. As soon as this projection appeared, an exceptionally clear star mark appeared within it. On top of the star mark, the creases of the mountain range and the fine traces of the river could be clearly seen. Swoosh! Xiao Hua's gaze had just landed on the star mark when it immediately emitted a resplendent radiance. The radiance not only covered the tyrannical illusory figure but also illuminated the space within a radius of 10,000 miles. At the same time, in the endless starry sky, there was also a star that emitted starlight, covering a large area of the starry sky. Boom! Another deafening roar resounded, and the entire night sky seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. Pillars of starlight and moonlight filled the night sky, which were filled with a primordial aura, poured down like a torrential river, ignoring space and instantly enveloping a radius of 10,000 miles. Along with this pillar of starlight and moonlight, there was also a heaven and earth restriction that enveloped an area of several thousand li. Not to mention that the four-colored spiritual fire was instantly extinguished, not to mention that Xiao Hua was imprisoned by this heaven and earth restriction, he couldn't even move. Even the thoughts in his mind had slowed down. Nirvana rebirth. Xiao Hua was dumbfounded. Xiao Hua was restricted by the heaven and earth phenomenon, and Wen Chu, the flying feather void beast, Daoist Wu, and the five-colored sea godshell were also affected by this phenomenon. Although they didn't suffer as much as Xiao Hua, they couldn't use their abilities smoothly, and the battle between them was also stopped. In particular, the Heaven and Earth Pagoda's suppression collapsed under this Heaven and Earth phenomenon, and Daoist Wu's spatial restriction also collapsed and could no longer be perfected. Chapter 4385. Looking at the moonlight tide falling and rushing into the star mark rapidly expanded. Along with the expansion of the star mark was the valiant will of the golden-winged rock. That will was rising steadily. In just a few breaths of time, a star several hundred miles in size was already in sight, and that will had reached a terrifying level once again. Damn it! Xiao Hua urged his magic power with all his strength, and the mysterious dark cloud also urged his soul technique, trying his best to resist the invasion of this will. He understood that if he was invaded by this will, not only would he be timid when he saw the golden-winged rock in the future, he would not dare to fight. Even his own Dao realm would be damaged. Once the stars were formed, they began to slowly rotate in the sky. With each rotation, the starlight tide would become a little thicker. After 365 revolutions, the starlight tide was like a huge stone pillar that ran through the stars in the sky and the stars on the ground. Gah! Another clear sound rang out, and the rotation of the star came to an abrupt stop. At the same time, the pillar of light from the moon and stars scattered, and all the phenomena in the world immediately fell into the star. Even all the shackles and wills disappeared like streams returning to their origin. Just as Xiao Hua's thoughts were able to move nimbly, ka. The star let out an obscure sound. This sound sounded very simple, but when it fell into Xiao Hua's ears, it was as if the world was collapsing. Xiao Hua almost reached out his hands to cover his ears. It was also with this sound that the planet collapsed towards the center. A transparent, golden-winged rock made of gold flew out of the planet once again. Damn it! Just as the golden-winged rock flew out, a solid golden light shot out from his eyes and landed directly on Xiao Hua's body. Xiao Hua cursed, "What's going on? Haven't I always been the one to break through in life and death situations? How can it fall on this guy's head today?" As he spoke, Xiao Hua didn't hesitate at all. The true essence within his body was activated without any regard for his life, and the thunderclap ninth heaven was displayed. Xiao Hua's entire body almost turned transparent, and like a bolt of lightning, he charged towards the horizon. Ha ha! Seeing Xiao Hua's unparalleled thunder escape technique, the golden-winged rock did not put it in his eyes at all. He laughed and said, "Since that's the case, why are you still running? Between heaven and earth, where can you escape to?" As it spoke, the golden-winged rock spread its wings, and the space nearby trembled. The golden-winged rock did not seem to move at all, but the space suddenly folded, like layers of mountains. By the time the golden-winged great rock moved, all the distance between them had been shaken off. Xiao Hua's lightning-like flowing light was also caught in the middle. The golden-winged rock's sharp claws, which seemed to be made of gold, stretched out slightly. Those sharp claws immediately pierced through the void and landed on Xiao Hua's head. The wind under the sharp claws tore through the void, and Xiao Hua's golden body flickered rapidly under this wind. So fast. This was Xiao Hua's first time encountering an opponent that was comparable to his lightning evasion technique. While he was astonished, he slapped his own head. Boom! A large hand emerged from the top of his head and collided with the golden-winged rock's sharp claws. Amidst the loud explosion, the golden-winged rock's body was sent tumbling. After Xiao Hua's hand was shattered, his entire body fell to the ground again. Damn it! Xiao Hua's figure fell. Seeing the golden-winged rock attack again, he pondered in his heart, this golden-winged rock is the first great saint of the demon race, and can be said to be the most powerful demon race in the 3 continents. This Xiao was originally not his opponent. Just now, he borrowed this Xiao's hand to be reborn. I'm afraid he has already passed the last bottleneck and reached the peak of the 9th level of origin energy. Even, he might have already reached the edge of breaking through the void. This kind of expert, how can this Xiao be his opponent? Even if I use the devil blade murder, I'm afraid I can't really kill him. On the contrary, it will cause unnecessary trouble. Hee hee. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua sneered. Seeing the golden-winged rock's figure very strangely appear in front of him again, and those sharp claws once again stretched out into the void, pride grew in his heart. Even if I don't use the devil blade murder, could it be that this Xiao can't kill you? Fellow Daoist, please come out. Xiao Hua shook the Kunlun mirror, and the celestial roared and flew out from the space. The celestial rushed out, and without saying anything, he waved his fist to meet the golden-winged rock's sharp claws. Boom, boom, boom. The celestial's fist was tempered by 6 kinds of origin energy, and was incomparably hard, comparable to the golden-winged rock's golden claws. In the midst of the rumbling, the golden-winged rock's sharp claws flickered with golden light, and the celestial's fist also flickered several times. Fellow Taoists, please. Since he released the celestial, Xiao Hua might as well go all the way, and shook the Kunlun mirror again. Boom, boom, boom. 18 rays of brilliance appeared from the Kunlun mirror at the same time, and 18 8th-level scattered nascent souls flew out at the same time. Each scattered nascent soul rushed out, and the entire world would shake violently. Countless amounts of heaven and earth's origin energy didn't need to be activated by any spells, and formed countless hurricanes that fell on the bodies of these scattered nascent souls. Hiss! The golden-winged rock sucked in a breath of cold air as if he had a toothache. His sword-like eyes couldn't help but become blurred again. However, that blurred gaze fell on the Kunlun mirror in Xiao Hua's hand. He really couldn't imagine how many experts there were in the legendary Kunlun mirror, the legendary Kunlun paradise. He could ignore Xiao Hua's Mahayana cultivation base. He could also ignore Wen Chu's realm. He could also ignore Daoist Wu's 9th-level origin energy. However, he couldn't ignore the strength of the celestial and the 18 8th-level scattered nascent souls that just appear. The golden-winged rock was very clear in his heart that his strength surpassed Xiao Hua's. With the help of Xiao Hua's four-colored spirit fire, he completely quenched the impurities in his body, and recondensed his body with the power of the stars. His strength surpassed Xiao Hua's. Even if Xiao Hua, the celestial, and 5/8 tribulation scattered nascent souls, he could still kill them. However, what he was facing now wasn't 5/8 tribulation scattered nascent souls, but 18/8 tribulation scattered nascent souls, which was 18 Xiao Hu's. Even if the golden-winged rock was only one step away from breaking through the void, how could it be the opponent of so many 9th-level origin energy cultivators? Needless to say, just as the golden-winged rock was thinking, the 18th level scattered nascent souls had already spread out, and each of them made the exact same gestures at the same time. Boom! Just with the same sound, 18 thunder hands of the same power grabbed at the golden-winged rock from 18 directions. Not good. The golden-winged rock was slightly startled, and he flapped his wings rapidly. Moreover, he spat out a thick beam of starlight from his mouth, wanting to shatter these big hands. Boom, boom, boom. The wings hit 2 big hands, and the thick beam of starlight hit 3 big hands, and the remaining 13 big hands almost fell on the golden-winged rock's body at the same time. The golden-winged rock's demon body immediately emitted a soaring demon light. This demon light was like a raging fire, blocking the big hands. However, at the same time that several big hands were annihilated, one big hand actually fell on the golden-winged rock's body. Catcher! The lightning was no less powerful than before. At the same time that the demon light was destroyed, the golden demon body that the golden-winged rock had just condensed began to melt under the impact of the lightning. Damn it! The golden-winged rock's heart tightened, and he was just about to counterattack. Boom! At this moment, the void shattered, and the celestial flew out of the void in an extremely strange manner. Those 2 fists quickly hit the golden-winged rock's abdomen, and in the roar, 2 huge deep holes appeared in his abdomen. Gah! The golden-winged rock was furious. With a long cry, he spat out a golden brilliance from his mouth and hit the celestial. Swish! This brilliance was so powerful that where the brilliance fell, the celestial's flesh and daoist robes all melted, leaving only a craggy white bone. It looked very horrifying. This white bone even somersaulted a dozen times in the air under the impact and fell in mid-air. Seeing that the celestial had fallen, countless chi of heaven and earth surged, and the flesh and blood grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. The golden-winged rock flapped his wings, and the pillar of light that could topple a mountain was about to fall, wanting to take the opportunity to kill the celestial. However, without waiting for the golden-winged rock's wings to fall, a huge fist suddenly appeared from the void. Bang! It smashed on his head. The golden-winged rock's eyes swayed, and Xiao Hua's figure actually swayed into 2 in the air. The golden-winged rock was furious. Who hadn't seen bullies before, but bullies like this were really rare. Gah! The golden-winged rock let out a long cry, and the power of the stars and moon rushed out again. The entire demon body instantly turned into the shape of a star, and at the same time, the stars suddenly shook, and the space several miles to the left instantly collapsed, and this collapse spread over 1,000 miles. Wherever this collapse passed, all living things were destroyed. Hee hee. The 18 scattered nascent souls sneered, and their hands formed seals at the same time. 18 lightning balls covered the space around the scattered nascent souls, and no matter how the demon light swept past, it couldn't disperse the lightning. The scattered nascent souls avoided this disaster, not to mention the celestial and Xiao Hua. They each activated their domains, and although their domains were broken and couldn't resist the golden-winged rock's spatial collapse, their bodies weren't injured at all. Seeing that the golden-winged rock was so valiant, Xiao Hua was also secretly shocked. Damn it, if I didn't have so many methods, I'm afraid I would have been killed by this guy as soon as I came up. So far, I've dealt with every move, but I don't know what other secret techniques this great demon saint has. As the saying goes, what you worry about will come true. Just as Xiao Hua was pondering, the golden-winged Great Peng's body once again flickered intensely. Countless pillars of starlight and moonlight descended. Boom! 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 With 3 consecutive booms, 3 identical golden-winged Great Pengs appeared within the pillars of starlight and moonlight. Chapter 4386. Is this the demon race's doppelganger technique? Xiao Hua scanned with his divine sense and saw that these three golden-winged rocks were exactly the same in terms of aura, strength, and pressure. He couldn't help but be dumbstruck. Gah! The three golden-winged rocks raised their heads and let out a long cry. They each urged their wings to separately pounce on the scattered nascent soul, Celestial, and Xiao Hua. Go! Xiao Hua smiled coldly. With a wave of his hand, the celestial skeleton fell into the air. That celestial had long sensed it. His body and mind swayed, and he fell into the skeleton. Boom! A fierce flame instantly emerged from the celestial skeleton and covered the golden-winged rocks pouncing over. This is. The golden-winged rocks cried out in surprise, and their demon body instinctively retreated. Catcher! At this moment, the laws of heaven and earth fell into the skeleton, and the aura of the skeleton was greatly reduced. However, even so, the golden-winged rock's doppelganger still didn't dare to rashly approach. The golden-winged rocks didn't enter, but that didn't mean that the celestial wouldn't enter. The celestial waved his hand and took the essence from Xiao Hua's body. His body rapidly expanded, and then, the three mouths spat out three-colored brilliance, trapping the golden-winged rock. And then, the celestial waved his 6 arms and pounced on the golden-winged rocks. Looking at the celestial's fierceness, anyone would think that he was the demon race's first great sage. Having his essence extracted by the celestial skeleton, Xiao Hua couldn't move for a while. Seeing that the other 18 scattered nascent souls had surrounded the golden-winged rock's doppelganger, Xiao Hua raised his hand again. The Kunlun mirror vibrated without any light, and another 18 8th-rank scattered nascent souls rushed out, once again surrounding the golden-winged rock's doppelganger. Damn it, you can't play like this, right? The golden-winged rocks almost collapsed. How many 9th-rank essence power Mahayana cultivators do you have in your Kunlun mirror? Kill. Xiao Hua looked coldly at the golden-winged rocks. He simply waved his hand and acted like a shopkeeper, instructing the 36 8th tribulation scattered nascent souls. Kill. The group of scattered nascent soul cultivators roared at the same time. The primordial chi of heaven and earth within 1,000 miles frantically surged into their bodies. As their hands formed seals, countless dragon-like thunderbolts were born in the void. Previously, when the golden-winged Great Peng was attacked by 18 scattered nascent souls, he was shocked at first and did not have time to observe carefully. Now that 36 scattered nascent souls were channeling their mana at the same time, the golden-winged Great Peng immediately saw that these scattered nascent souls were different from real human cultivators. He almost cried out involuntarily, "No, this is the nascent soul spirit body." After saying that, greed appeared in the eyes of the golden-winged Great Peng bird. Almost without thinking, it spread its wings. Boom! Facing the two clones of the scattered nascent soul, the star marks on its wings suddenly emitted a strange aura of desolation. Then, the wings, heads, and tails of the two golden-winged Great Peng birds didn't have any special changes. Their demonic bodies slowly showed the shape of stars again. With the appearance of the two stars, the aura of desolation became more and more powerful. The area within 100 miles of the two stars began to distort and collapse. A power of swallowing space rushed toward the group of scattered nascent souls like a ferocious ancient fierce beast. The strange phenomenon of the golden-winged Great Peng bird's nirvana and rebirth shook when Chu's heaven and earth pagoda. The imprisonment that was originally suppressing the flying feather Ni Kong beast was broken at once. The flying feather Ni Kong beast shook its body and wanted to escape into the void without hesitation. Unfortunately, at this time, the void had been imprisoned by the golden-winged Great Peng bird. Even as strong as the flying feather Ni Kong beast was, it could not enter. However, when it sensed the pressure around its body and when Chu's figure that could not move, the flying feather Ni Kong beast was relieved. On one hand, it was always paying attention to the changes in the space imprisonment. On the other hand, it looked at the star phenomenon in the distance. The flying feather Ni Kong beast was confident that it could escape into the void with its magic skills at the moment when the space changed, leaving no chance for Wen Chu. The phenomenon of the golden-winged Great Peng bird's rebirth was truly astonishing. Although the flying feather Ni Kong beast was the third great saint of the demonic clan, it could not help but admire it. A great saint was a demonic clan great saint who had obtained the recognition of the stars and could engrave star marks on their bodies. With these star marks, a demonic clan great saint would have an endless supply of the power of the stars and moon to use at any time. At the same time, because of these star marks, a demonic clan great saint could comprehend more of the power of the stars than an ordinary member of the void-swallowing demonic clan. They had more opportunities and could use the star marks to escape when breaking through the void. Even so, among the 6 demonic clan great saints, there might not even be one who could truly break through the void to reach a higher realm. The flying feather Ni Kong beast knew that this was the so-called opportunity. Sometimes, the flying feather Ni Kong beast envied the brains of humans. They could express illusory things in beautiful words. Opportunity was one of them. No one knew how to break through the void. Those who could break through the void directly went to a higher realm and did not leave behind any more information. However, there was one thing that all demonic clan great saints and void-swallowing demonic clan great saints knew, and that was power. Only when one was so powerful that the 3 continents could not contain them would they be able to open up passageways to higher realms in the void. But just how powerful was one? There was a lot more to it than that. The flying feather Ni Kong beast didn't know just how powerful he had to be able to break through the void, but he knew that there was no clear passageway in the void. Only when a passageway to a higher realm demonic clan great saint could there be a direction in the void. This was the conclusion that he had reached after searching through the void countless times. Why was the flying feather Ni Kong beast searching for this illusory spatial passageway? The reason was very simple. His power had reached a certain bottleneck, and after tens of thousands of years, he was unable to progress any further. As such, he had no choice but to find another way to find the legendary spatial passageway. At the same time, the flying feather Ni Kong beast also knew that it wasn't just him. All 6 great saints of the 1,000 demon holy realm were in the same situation. Their power had reached a bottleneck that was difficult to break through, and without an opportunity, they would most likely never be able to break through the void. However, what surprised him was that the golden-winged Great Peng truly lived up to its reputation as the most powerful being of the demonic clan. It was able to break through its bottleneck while battling a human Grand Ascension stage being. The flying feather Ni Kong beast didn't know what kind of secret technique the golden-winged Great Peng had used, but seeing as the golden-winged Great Peng's entire body had been reconstructed by the power of the stars, the flying feather Ni Kong beast knew that it wouldn't be long before the golden-winged Great Peng would be able to sense the passageway to break through the void. Holy F***CK. Seeing as the golden-winged Great Peng had taken shape, the flying feather Ni Kong beast turned to Wen Chu, who was also accumulating power in the distance, and he couldn't help but feel a burning desire in his heart. How about I give it a try as well? At this moment, the restriction dissipated like the tide. Boom boom boom. Before the flying feather Ni Kong beast had a chance to do anything else, a series of rumbling booms rang out from close to 500 kilometers to the left. Wen Chu waved a hand, and the 9 states cauldrons flew into the air amidst surging auspicious cloud. As soon as the 9 states cauldrons appeared, 9-colored light immediately enveloped an area of over 500 kilometers, and streams of human fortune flowed through the night sky like rivers. The 9 states cauldrons were like the 9 states of the hidden immortal continent, firmly trapping the flying feather Ni Kong beast within. This is. The flying feather void beast was greatly alarmed. Wherever his gaze and yuan sense reached, countless mountains, rivers, cities, city walls, and little rocks were born from this multicolored light. It was a little too much for his eyes to take in. Wave after wave of vast chi pillars emerged from all directions and crazily surged over, completely sealing off the surroundings. Damn it! The flying feather Ni Kong beast didn't know what the 9 states cauldrons were, but he knew that they were definitely the imperial tools of a Confucian cultivator. Wen Chu had no intention of fighting him head-on, he only wanted to use the imperial tool to suppress him, so how could he possibly break through during a battle with Wen Chu? The flying feather Ni Kong beast cursed angrily, and his figure flickered rapidly. The nearby void was like a door to the flying feather Ni Kong beast, and it immediately opened up. Unfortunately, before the flying feather Ni beast could escape into the void, he saw countless streams of vast chi gushing out from the void. This vast chi had already condensed into the shape of inscriptions, and the inscriptions gave birth to the chanting of saints, blocking his way forward. Chimpage. The flying feather Ni beast snorted coldly, and his slightly stubby forelimbs stretched forward. Whoosh! All the inscriptions were torn apart, and the flying feather Ni beast ignored the impact of the inscriptions breaking and forced his way into the void. Boom! At this moment, another huge roar came from the top of the flying feather Ni beast's head, and then, an aura similar to the majesty of heaven and earth swept over madly. This aura was so perfectly combined with the aura of the human race in the 9 states cauldrons. Not only did it imprison the space within a radius of thousands of kilometers, but the void that the flying feather Ni beast was about to squeeze into suddenly became as solid as a mountain rock. Not to mention the flying feather Ni beast wanting to force his way in, it was difficult for him to squeeze out at this time. This is the auspicious artifact of the human race. The flying feather Ni beast suddenly came to his senses and shouted, Where did you get this thing? The essence of the heaven and earth pagoda was a Taoist spiritual treasure, and it represented the will of heaven and earth. The 9 states cauldrons were the artifact of the human race, and it represented the fate and will of the human race. The 3 elements of heaven, earth, and man fell together, which was the harmony advocated by the human race's Confucian cultivators. Harmony represented the origin, and in this origin, how could the flying feather Ni beast escape? How could Wen Chu pay attention to the flying feather Ni beast's question? He opened his mouth and spat out the 5-colored innate chi, which turned into thousands of pearls outside the 9 states cauldrons and spread out in all directions. As soon as the 5-colored pearls fell on the 9 states cauldrons, the thousands of inscriptions in the cauldrons immediately twisted and began to combine with each other. In an instant, layers of mountains of text appeared, and with a rumbling sound, they suppressed the flying feather Ni beast. Roar! Seeing that the mountains of text were about to be formed, the flying feather Ni beast gritted his teeth and raised his head to roar. A layer of blood-red shadow appeared outside his monster body, and at the same time, the star engraved on his back shone brightly. A blood-red star, like a natural demon star, rapidly expanded. As soon as the star and moon appeared, the mountains of text immediately collapsed. With another rumbling sound, the blood-red shadow of the flying feather Ni beast slammed into the 9 states cauldrons. Peng! A wave of air rose into the sky, and the 9 states grand array was smashed open. In particular, the flying feather Ni beast also collided with the cauldrons. His body shook, and 2 identical blood-red stars appeared and flew to the left and right at the same time. The 9 states grand array was immediately torn apart. Chapter 4387. HMPH. The flying feather void beast let out a cold snort. 2 blood-red claws grew out of the blood-red star, and they reached out for Wen Chu's head from several hundred miles away. Wen Chu was shocked. He raised his hand and slash. Swoosh. Where the sword light fell, the blood-red claws were like nothingness and did not receive any damage at all. It was also at this moment that the blood-red claws fell on Wen Chu's head. Strangely, the blood-red claws did not fall, but produced a great suction force out of thin air. However, when the suction force fell on Wen Chu's body, it did not produce any effect. Ah! The flying feather void beast turned pale with fright. You are not human? Huh! Not to mention the flying feather void beast, even Wen Chu was puzzled. He hurriedly urged his true chi to check his body, but there was nothing wrong. At this time, Wen Chu heard the flying feather void beast's words and looked at its blood-red claws. He suddenly understood. The flying feather void beast was not only born with spatial magical powers, but also knew the power of bloodline. These claws must be to grab the bloodline out of his body. Unfortunately, Wen Chu was Xiao Hua's doppelganger. Although Wen Chu still cultivated to the 9th level of essence force, he was not a complete human. In particular, Wen Chu's essence was different from Xiao Hua's. His essence was completely obtained from the heavenly demon, which was the essence of the upper realm. Even if Wen Chu's bloodline existed, how could the flying feather void beast extract it? Ha ha ha. Wen Chu laughed and raised his hand to point at the heaven and earth pagoda. Boom. The heaven and earth pagoda roared again and fiercely pressed down. The torn 9 provinces' great array began to rapidly recover. Damn it. The flying feather void beast didn't understand why its innate ability didn't work, but at this point, it was useless to think too much. With a flap of its wings, it suddenly pounced toward the gap of the 9 regions' grand array. The sharp claws of its forelimbs slashed out of thin air and landed on the gap that was invisible to the naked eye. Open! The flying feather Ni Kong beast roared, and the formation was instantly torn apart. The power of the stars around the flying feather Ni Kong beast surged, and its body grew from hundreds of kilometers to thousands of meters in just a few breaths. Swoosh! There was a flash of light, and the flying feather Ni Kong beast broke free from the formation. Damn it! As it flew out of the formation, the flying feather Ni Kong beast's face turned red. He didn't dare to imagine that if the other demon clans knew that he had transformed and escaped from the 9 regions' grand array, where would he put his face as the 3rd great saint of the demon clan? Roar! The flying feather Ni Kong beast roared, and its monster body grew wildly. Just as it was about to pull itself together and fight with Wen Chu again, a dazzling light curtain emerged from the place where the golden-winged roc and Xiao Hua were fighting. The flying feather Ni Kong beast raised its eyes, and when it saw everything inside the light curtain, it was immediately stunned on the spot. The rebirth of the golden-winged roc also shattered the power of space of the great god Dejiang transformed by Daoist Witch. The 5-colored sea god shell, like the flying feather Ni Kong beast, saw the opportunity of the golden-winged roc, and its thoughts were the same as the flying feather Ni Kong beast. However, it also understood that its strength couldn't be compared to the flying feather Ni Kong beast, and even more so, the golden-winged roc. Its bottleneck was far from being broken through. Moreover, it also understood that Bai Qingyu and the Fortune Gate were like fire and water, and it was likely that it was time for it to fight to the death with Daoist Witch. Seeing that the shackles of the golden-winged roc's rebirth had disappeared, Daoist Witch's space shackles had yet to fully form. The 5-colored sea god shell flashed with a 5-colored halo, and the entire space rumbled as it pounced towards Daoist Witch. This wasn't a big deal, and Daoist Witch's space shackles were instantly shattered. Moreover, before the 5-colored sea god shell's figure arrived, the suffocating airwaves had already surged over and drowned Daoist Witch. Daoist Witch didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw that the 5-colored sea god shell had given up on all its abilities and was going all out with its main body. He was proficient in soul techniques, but he didn't cultivate his body, so how could he be a match for the 5-colored sea god shell? Needless to say, the 5-colored sea god shell's 5-colored demonic light was powerful, and it had already corroded all the origin energy within 1,000 miles. Even the light and shadows in the space were distorted to an extreme degree. I'm afraid only a heavenly being can fight against this fellow. Daoist Witch hurriedly spread out his 4 wings, and his figure nimbly dodged the attack of the 5-colored sea god shell. At the same time, Daoist Witch's sharp claws activated the power of space again in an attempt to confine the 5-colored sea god shell. Unfortunately, the power of space couldn't take shape under the attack of the 5-colored sea god shell. Who? Seeing the 5-colored sea god shell flying towards him again, Daoist Witch had no choice but to dodge it again. When the 5-colored sea god shell flew past him, the green light around Daoist Witch shone brightly again, and the green seal text flowed again. In just a moment, the figure of Hutu god with a human body, a snake tail, and 7 hands appeared again. Facing the powerful shell of the 5-colored sea god shell, Daoist Witch waved his 7 hands at the same time, and countless gods and ghosts screamed. The green seal text flashed in the air, and then a reddish-yellow land thousands of miles in size blocked the 5-colored sea god shell's head. Although the land was thick and the green seal text's power was unpredictable, under the buzzing and rapid rotation of the 5-colored sea god shell, the reddish-yellow land was cracked by the impact of the 5-colored sea god shell. Pillars of earth rose into the sky, and in a few seconds, the land was shattered. Even Daoist Witch's figure was almost hit by the 5-colored sea god shell. Seeing a wound on his back, Daoist Witch didn't dare to take the risk. He immediately turned into the figure of Dejiang and flapped his wings to dodge the five-colored sea god shell. In this way, Daoist Witch and the five-colored sea god shell were in a slightly awkward situation. Daoist Witch didn't dare to confront the five-colored sea god shell directly. Seeing the five-colored sea god shell rushing over, he could only dodge. After the five-colored sea god shell flew away, Daoist Witch chased after it and wanted to attack again. However, when the attack failed and the five-colored sea god shell turned around again, Daoist Witch could only dodge again. The two ninth-level masters of the three continents could only be in a stalemate here. Everyone could leave the battle at any time, but no one could leave for the time being. When the five-colored sea god seashell had an idea and was about to use another method, the same dazzling light curtain appeared from where the golden-winged rock and Xiao Hua were fighting. The five-colored sea god seashell saw everything inside the light curtain through the five-colored halo, and the rampaging figure suddenly stopped in midair. An extremely incredulous voice sounded from the seashell, the seventh great saint? When the golden-winged rock saw that the 36 scattered nascent soul cultivators were all spiritual bodies, he couldn't help but be greedy. The star shape appeared, and the power of swallowing sky pounced on the scattered nascent soul cultivators like a ferocious ancient beast. Seeing the two stars, Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and thought for a while. The Kunlun mirror in his hand shook again, and he cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Daoist Feng Wu." In the light pillar of the Kunlun mirror, the Feng Wu spread his wings and flew out. Seeing the golden-winged rock's power of swallowing sky, he sneered. "Gah!" With a long cry, he spread his wings, and 7 huge light pillars soared into the night sky. These light pillars were so dazzling, like a sky-high light curtain, illuminating the surrounding thousands of miles. Then, boom, boom, boom. A loud sound came from the bottom of the light pillars, and the Big Dipper stars floated out from the back of the Feng Wu. The Big Dipper stars in the night sky shone at the same time, filling the night sky like a string of pearls. 7 beams of starlight and moonlight filled with the aura of desolation descended and merged with the 7 beams of light. The Feng Wu's demon body expanded rapidly in front of the golden-winged rock's dumbfounded eyes. What was special was that as the demon body expanded, the Big Dipper stars also expanded, filling the space within 1,000 miles. The edges of each star were distorted, and the light and shadow were like ripples in a lake. The 7 powers of swallowing sky, which were not inferior to the golden-winged rocks, roared and pounced on the golden-winged rock's power of swallowing sky. You are the 7th great saint." The golden-winged rock also looked at the Feng Wu in disbelief and exclaimed, "Why are you with the Grand Ascension stage, human?" "You." At this point, the golden-winged rock suddenly realized something. He looked at the Kunlun mirror in Xiao Hua's hand and shouted, You became a great saint in the Kunlun wonderland? No wonder. Ouch." While the golden-winged rock was still in shock, the Feng Wu's power of swallowing sky had already tangled with the golden-winged rock's power of swallowing sky. The space within 1,000 miles was filled with traces of pitch black. This pitch black was so dazzling in the night sky that it looked like countless fishes were swimming freely. In this pitch-black surroundings, whether it was the vital energy of heaven and earth, the noble qi, or anything else, everything was being torn apart and sucked into the pitch-black darkness. Damn it. The great golden-winged rock's eyes flashed with golden light as he glared at the proud Feng Wu. He knew in his heart that if they were to compete in terms of cultivation, the 7th great saint might not be his match. However, in terms of star power alone, even if he had 3 clones and 3 star marks, he was still no match for the 7-star great saint. After all, the essence of the power of swallowing sky was the power of the stars. The 7-star great saint 7-star great saint was not something a 1-star great saint like him could compare to. However, the golden-winged rock was in an awkward position. In the face of 36 scattered nascent souls, most of his abilities were useless. He could only use the power of swallowing sky from the demon race's great saint and his powerful physical body. However, his physical body was no match for the celestial. At this moment, the celestial had already beaten one of his clones to the point where he couldn't fight back at all. Not to mention, the celestial's 3 beams of light were very strange. The clone's essence, qi, and spirit couldn't resist at all. He could only dodge and evade, and it wouldn't be long before he was defeated or even killed by the Celestial. He could only use the power of swallowing sky from the Celestial. However, the power of swallowing sky was so weak in front of a 7-star great saint that it had become the golden-winged rock's fatal weakness. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.